Hey guys, tonight we're heading back, way back, to a time of gods with falcon heads, golden coffins and rivers that glowed beneath the stars. But this isn't your average history lesson. This one comes with some, let's say, enhanced perception. We're talking about how the ancient Egyptians got higher, yes, higher, than you probably ever imagined. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your city and the current time in the comments. Let's see who's tuning in late night with a curiosity for the ancient and the elevated. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your feet are bare on warm, sand-coloured stone, and in your hand, you cradle something strange and beautiful. It's the bloom of the sacred blue lotus, Nymphaea caerulea, a delicate deep sapphire flower with a faint golden shimmer along the edges of its petals. The scent is sweet, almost intoxicating on its own, like a blend of honey, night-blooming jasmine, and just a whiff of something peppery and mysterious. You raise it to your nose and inhale. The world doesn't twist, at least not right away. But something loosens. The air feels softer, sounds echo longer, like you're standing in a tall marble room, though you're still out in the open. You glance at the water of the Nile nearby, and suddenly it doesn't just shimmer in the moonlight, it breathes. The blue lotus was no ordinary flower in ancient Egypt. It was their version of a ticket to the stars, both literal and symbolic. This wasn't just decoration for tomb walls, it was a spiritual tool, a mood shifter, and let's be honest, a potential mild hallucinogen. You sit near a shallow pool inside a temple courtyard, watching the lotus float beside you. The priest here didn't just admire this flower, they drank it, steeped it in wine, and used it in rituals designed to connect with the gods. Some even suggest they mixed it into their version of perfumes or incense, the way people today might microdose their way through a meditation retreat. The lotus, rich in alkaloids like apomorphine and luciferin, is thought by modern researchers to have had subtle psychoactive properties, nothing like modern psychedelics, but just enough to shift your senses. Apomorphine, for example, is a dopamine agonist. Not necessarily enough to send you into full-blown kaleidoscopic reveries, but the Egyptians weren't necessarily looking for that. What they sought was communion, clarity, elevation, a loosening of the spiritual boundaries that normally tie us down to the physical world. As you lie back, the flower resting on your chest, you remember a scene you once read about. A banquet in a nobleman's tomb painting where guests wear lotus flowers as headpieces, hold them to their noses and lounge beside wine jars bigger than a toddler. These weren't just decorative choices, this was pharmaco-symbolic messaging. The lotus wasn't about being high, it was highness, in both its literal and spiritual sense. To wear the lotus was to invite connection with the divine. To inhale its scent was to slip a little closer to the boundary between this life and the next. Of course, there's still some academic argument about just how psychoactive this plant really was. Some scholars think the effects were mostly suggestive, a placebo wrapped in ritual. Others argue that in the context of Egyptian ceremonies, especially when mixed with wine or used during fasting or prolonged chanting, the effects could be quite real, especially for those already immersed in altered states of consciousness. Think of it this way. If your entire worldview revolves around symbolic power, spiritual contact, and a constant conversation with the gods, even the gentlest nudge might open cosmic floodgates. And then there's the fringe theory, the fun one. Some researchers speculate that the Egyptians may have selectively bred their blue lotus to boost its psychoactive effects, creating strains lost to time. That would explain why the effects seem underwhelming to modern users sipping lotus tea from Etsy sachets. We're not exactly recreating their strains or their ceremony, and the context, the sacred geometry of their temples, the hum of chanting priests, the golden shimmer of firelight on hieroglyph-covered walls, it all mattered. You pick another bloom from the water. The priest beside you nods gently. No words, just a knowing look, like he sees something flickering just behind your eyes. The air grows thick with silence. Somewhere a harp plays, slow and hypnotic. You feel yourself floating, not literally, but close, a mental untethering. The sky looks deeper now, as if it's not just overhead, but around you. That's when you realise they weren't using the lotus to escape. They were using it to arrive, to be more present, to see not less, but more. The lotus appears again and again in Egyptian art and mythology, often unfurling as a symbol of rebirth. One god, Nefertum, literally was the blue lotus, a deity born from the primordial waters, offering healing and fragrance to the sun god Ra. The story goes that the lotus emerged from the dark water and opened its petals to reveal the infant sun, bringing light and life to the world. Imagine that every time you inhale this flower, you're reenacting that same moment, waking up the world. But let's not get too romantic. There's also the practical fact that the lotus just made people feel good. At those wild banquets, it may have been a way to ease social anxiety, open hearts, or loosen tongues for a good story or 10. Whether mildly psychoactive or deeply symbolic, the lotus was everywhere for a reason. As you sit with your flower, the stars overhead spin just a little slower, like they're waiting for you to catch up. Your breath deepens. The priest lights a small cone of incense beside you, and the first thread of smoke curls into the air, thick, rich, and somehow sweet. That, though, is a story for another night, or rather, for the next moment in this one. Because the incense, it's not just air freshener, it's transportation. And if you think the lotus was dreamy, wait till you breathe this stuff. You don't realise at first what's happening. The smoke doesn't rush in with drama, it creeps, lazy and warm, slipping through your nostrils like a thought you didn't mean to think. The cone of incense is tiny, burning in a copper dish beside the lotus pool, but the scent, it rolls in heavy, like velvet soaked in wine, sweet, resinous, with hints of cinnamon, honey, cedar, maybe even dried fruits. It smells like a dessert you've never eaten and a memory you never had. This is kyphi, or at least the ancient Egyptian version of it. A sacred incense blend used in temples, tombs, and sometimes even bedrooms. You blink a little slower. Breathing has become an act of immersion. With every inhale, your chest fills with not just air, but ambience. You're not just sitting in a temple, you're inside something's dream. Kyphi wasn't just a fragrance, it was a carefully constructed experience. The Egyptians wrote down its recipe in medical texts, sacred scrolls, and even on temple walls. Recipes varied, but the base was usually made of wine, honey, raisins, frankincense, myrrh, juniper, cinnamon, and dozens of other ingredients. Some imported, some local. It was pounded, soaked, boiled, strained, and fermented. This stuff took weeks to make. It wasn't some casual craft fair potpourri. It was an offering to the gods and conveniently an olfactory doorway to altered states. The priest tending the smoke doesn't speak. He just wafts it toward you with a fan made of palm fronds like he's brushing the edge of your spirit. In this moment, you're starting to understand what the temples were really for. They weren't just places to worship, they were places to transform. Every sensory detail was calculated, from the echo of chanting off polished stone to the way the incense hit the air at dusk, to the specific notes of the music. All of it layered together to push you closer to something bigger than yourself, something divine, or maybe just something other. Here's where it gets weird. Some researchers believe kyphi had psychoactive properties, not just because of its ingredients, some of which were potentially mind-altering in large amounts, but because of how it interacted with the brain through scent alone. Smell is powerful, it's directly wired to the limbic system, which handles emotion, memory, and mood. That's why a whiff of your grandmother's cookies can hit harder than a movie monologue. Now imagine combining that neural shortcut with rhythmic chanting, dim light, and a heavily symbolic space where every wall told a cosmic story. In gold and ochre. The Egyptians didn't need mushrooms, they had temples, and kyphi. One fringe theory even suggests that kyphi was used as a sedative, or even a sleep inducer in certain healing rituals. There are references in Greek and Roman texts to Egyptian dream temples, where people would lie on sacred beds and inhale kyphi smoke to encourage healing visions. Was this ancient aromatherapy or spiritual pharmacology? Hard to say. But if you're already deep into belief, and breathing in fermented resin soaked in wine, it's a short step from relaxed to transcendent. You lie down on a cool stone bench near the altar. The air around you is golden with smoke. It doesn't burn, it embraces. You hear the faint clatter of sistrums, bronze instruments that jingle like metallic raindrops. The priest begins to chant. Not loudly, just a low hum, syllables you don't understand but feel vibrating in your chest. It's in this haze that something happens. You're not asleep, but you're not fully awake. A thought slides into your mind uninvited. You're not alone. You open your eyes, but the room looks the same. Still, you feel watched. Not in a creepy way, but like someone's waiting for you to notice them. This is the mental space the Egyptians cultivated. Not chaotic hallucination, but a gentle thinning of the veil. The line between waking and dreaming, life and death, self and God, it becomes transparent. It's why they filled their tombs with paintings and scrolls and instructions. They truly believed the soul travelled after death, and maybe kyphi was the in-flight entertainment. Of course, there's scholarly disagreement here. Some historians say kyphi was just fancy potpourri, nothing mind-altering, just symbolic and pleasant, but others point to texts that describe it as sleep-inducing, vision-inspiring, even aphrodisiac. And then there's that one line from Plutarch, who wrote that kyphi causes dreams and produces a cheerful and open mood. Not exactly dry science. You sit up slowly, your head swimming but calm. The priest offers you a sip of water, though it tastes faintly of something herbal. There's no panic here, just waves of warmth and a sensation like your body has expanded slightly outside its own edges. You're beginning to get it. Egyptian ritual wasn't about escape. It was about alignment. Their high wasn't about disconnecting. It was about tuning in, like adjusting a radio dial until the gods came through clearly. And don't think this was just for the elite. Sure, the pharaohs got the VIP access, but festivals often spilled into the streets. Temples opened their outer courtyards to commoners. Incense smoke drifted beyond the sacred chambers. You didn't have to be a priest to feel the buzz. You just had to be there, in the moment, breathing it in. You stand up now, a little dizzy but clear-eyed. The kyphi still lingers on your skin like perfume. The music has stopped. The priest has vanished. But the mood, it stayed. You walk outside into the night and the stars feel closer, brighter, like they're watching you back. And as your sandals crunch along the temple stones, you notice a new sound, faint drumming in the distance, a rhythm that pulls at your ribs. You follow it. Because the next stage of this journey, it's not about breathing or sipping. It's about movement, about surrendering your body to something deeper, darker, and much more dangerous. You're heading toward the trance. The drums aren't close, not yet, but your body already knows they're coming. It's in the way your pulse starts to shift, syncing with that far-off beat like it's been waiting for a cue. The air's heavier now, thick with the same lingering smoke and something else. Something raw and alive. You follow the sound deeper into the temple complex down a long stone corridor, lit only by flickering oil lamps set into the walls. Each step forward echoes behind you like footsteps from another world. Then the corridor opens into a hidden courtyard, and that's where you see them. Dancers, drummers, and priests circling a fire that's burning blue at the base. There's no audience, no stage, just movement, rhythm, heat. The air vibrates with sound. Not music in the modern sense, but layered pulses. Hand drums in complex polyrhythms, ankle bells shaking, and sharp metal clicks from sistrums that jangle with a hypnotic pulse. You feel it before you understand it. This isn't a performance. It's a ritual. You've stumbled into the kind of ceremony that wasn't for public view. One where the goal wasn't entertainment. It was possession. You find a spot near a pillar and watch as the dancers accelerate. Their movements aren't graceful. They're raw, staccato, almost chaotic. One woman spins with her eyes rolled back, arms flailing as if she's shaking something off, something inside. A man drops to his knees and slams the ground in time with the drums, his chest heaving. A priestess steps into the centre wearing a lioness mask. You recognise her as Sekhmet, goddess of chaos, fire and healing, if healing happens to involve blood and frenzy. She raises her arms and lets out a sound that's not quite a roar but not human either. It cuts through your chest like static. Then the others join in, shouting, not words but deep-throated tones that shake your ribs. You're not just hearing it, you're feeling it, and it dawns on you. This is how they did it. This is how they reached the gods. Not by quietly meditating or sipping on ceremonial tea, but by losing control. By sweating, shouting, shaking. By giving up the part of the mind that wants to stay safe and polite. You start to wonder what's in the water jug being passed around. Judging by the intensity of what you're watching, It's not just barley and hops. That jug, if you ever get close enough to taste it, is probably full of Egyptian beer, but not the kind you're picturing. No ice-cold pint glass here. This beer is thick, almost chunky, a slurry made from fermented emmer wheat and dates. It's cloudy, rich, and way more nutritious than anything in a modern brewery. Think, bread you can drink. But here's the kicker. It was strong. Not just in alcohol content, though that was high too, but strong in symbolism, in effect, in purpose, especially when mixed with other ritual ingredients, like herbs, resins, or even poppy derivatives. Beer was sacred. It was tied to the goddess Hathor, lady of joy, music, and intoxication. She was worshipped as the mother of beauty and the bringer of drunkenness. There's a famous myth where Hathor, as Sekhmet, goes into a blood-fueled rage and nearly destroys humanity. To stop her, the gods dye beer red and pour thousands of jars across the land. She drinks it, thinking it's blood, and becomes so drunk she falls asleep and forgets to finish the slaughter. The moral? Even divine rage can be soothed by a strong drink. You inch closer, and a priest offers you a sip. It's sour, thick, and clings to your throat, but warmth blooms in your belly almost immediately. You're not drunk, not yet, but your thoughts blur at the edges. The firelight pulses. The drummers grin without looking at you. You wonder if this beer was brewed for this moment. Spoiler, it probably was. The Egyptians had breweries inside temples. Inside. Imagine church basements turning out holy IPAs by candlelight. It wasn't casual, it was sacred. Beer was used in offerings, in healing rituals, and, as you're experiencing now, in full-body rites designed to open the doors between flesh and spirit. There's a fringe theory, fun but not mainstream, that Egyptian beer might have been infused with psychoactive herbs. Some point to poppy pollen found in tombs, others suggest mandrake, henbane, or even blue lotus extract stirred right into the mash. Was it a mild trip or a spiritual one? Depends on the batch, depends on the purpose. But when paired with rhythmic drumming and full-body dancing, even a regular strong ale could tip the soul sideways. You realise now that this ceremony isn't about performing for gods, it's about becoming them. The dancers blur, their faces shining with sweat, their eyes unfocused and wild. One collapses and is carried gently to the edge of the fire. Not hurt, just gone somewhere else. You can almost hear the gods whispering through the drums. There's no division between medicine, magic, and intoxication here. It's all one path, one language. You watch as a priestess dips her fingers into a jar of oil and draws symbols on her forehead, then someone else's. Her hands shake, but with purpose. The entire group begins to slow, movements becoming circular, hypnotic. The fire dims, the drumming fades. You exhale and realise your body's been tense this whole time. You let it go, shoulders dropping, mouth dry. You sit back against the stone and let your head rest. You're not possessed, not like them, but you're not the same as when you entered either. The dancers curl onto the ground, spent. Someone sings softly, a melody without words, the kind that clings to you long after it ends. You close your eyes and listen, letting the warmth of the fire and beer hold you. But as the ceremony dissolves, a new scent drifts through the night, sharp, sour, with an edge like cut roots and wet stone. Something primal, something old. You turn toward the temple garden where moonlight glints off wide, waxy leaves. You're about to meet a plant with a reputation so strange it screams. The garden is still, unnervingly so. No rustling leaves, no chirping insects, just moonlight dripping across stone paths and the thick green of ancient plants. You're not sure why you're walking toward it. No one beckoned you, no priest waved an arm, but your feet move anyway. Something in that strange scent pulls you forward. As you step off the worn sandstone and into the dirt, the air cools instantly, like you've crossed into a different realm. And there it is, at the base of a fig tree, low to the ground, with wide, jagged leaves and a thick root shaped almost like a twisted doll. Mandrake! Even without knowing its name, your skin prickles just looking at it. The stories around this root are some of the oldest in the world, whispered across cultures like bad omens passed between campfires. The ancient Egyptians were among the first to record its use, both medicinally and magically, and they didn't tread lightly. Mandrake was powerful, dangerous, useful, if you knew what you were doing. You crouch beside it, breathing in the oily, bitter scent rising from the leaves. It's pungent, like old apples left out too long and something spicier beneath, like raw ginger and dark earth. The root is oddly humanoid, broad at the top, tapering into thin root-like legs. In some cases, they even look like they had tiny arms, or a crude face. You've heard the legends. The scream of the mandrake when pulled from the ground was said to kill instantly. Now, whether the Egyptians believed that specific tale, or whether it crept in later from Greek and medieval folklore, is still up for debate. But it tells you something about how seriously this plant was taken. You didn't casually pluck a mandrake, you earned it. A priest approaches silently, carrying what looks like a twisted bronze blade. He kneels beside you and starts to clear the soil around the root without a word. The process is careful, almost surgical. You notice a piece of leather wrapped tightly around the upper stem, tied to a small statue, perhaps a decoy, or maybe a symbolic sacrifice. The blade makes no sound as it cuts the final fibre, and the priest holds the root up like a newborn child. No scream, just the eerie silence of something important having changed. Mandrake, or Mandragora officinarum, contains powerful alkaloids, most famously scopolamine and hyoscyamine, chemicals that mess with the nervous system in all sorts of dramatic ways. Hallucinations, sedation, amnesia, even delirium. This isn't a flower child's gentle trip through rainbows. This is serious stuff, witch's brew level. In small doses it could sedate or dull pain. In large ones, you might lose your grip on space, time, or language itself. No wonder the Egyptians considered it a portal between the physical and spiritual worlds. It appears in various medical papyri, often prescribed as a painkiller or sleep aid. They even sometimes soaked it in wine to create a potent potion, one meant to lull the drinker into a dream-heavy sleep, or possibly even mimic death. That kind of controlled unconsciousness, it had its uses, surgery perhaps, or initiation, or something deeper, something darker. You follow the priest as he brings the root to a low altar near the edge of the garden. There, 2 more priests have already started preparing a mixture. Wine is poured into a bowl made of polished alabaster, and the mandrake is ground with a dark, sticky resin, possibly myrrh or a pepernax. The smell changes. It becomes richer, heavier, almost sweet, like something you'd burn at a funeral or pour into a tomb. This is no casual drink, it's a boundary pusher. You hesitate, but they offer the bowl anyway. It's warm, not hot, and thicker than you expect, like mulled wine that sat too long in the sun. You take a sip and immediately your tongue tingles, then your lips, then your fingers. The taste is odd, numbing but fragrant like licorice and earth and old cinnamon bark. You sit on a carved stone seat as they chant low in the background. The sky tilts ever so slightly, not in a spin, but like the edge of a book lifting to let in light. And just like that, the visions begin. Not fire and madness like you feared, but waves, images blooming behind your closed eyes, fields of gold, vast rivers flowing backward, eyes painted on every surface, blinking slowly in the darkness. The garden is no longer a garden. It's a hallway of stars, and you're walking through it barefoot, carrying a flower that blooms with each step. Voices reach you, not in words, but in hums, like they're being sung through your bones. This is what the Egyptians were chasing. Access. Not intoxication for pleasure, but elevation through surrender. Mandrake wasn't used for parties. It was for those moments when you needed to step outside yourself and return with knowledge, or healing, or a name whispered by a god. It wasn't recreational, it was transformational. But again, not everyone agrees. Some Egyptologists argue that references to mandrake in medical texts are more symbolic than pharmaceutical. They point out that in some tomb art, mandrake is depicted as a fertility symbol, often handed from one figure to another in what could be a romantic or ritual context. That doesn't necessarily rule out its chemical effects, but it muddies the water. Was the mandrake more of a metaphor? Or was it both symbol and substance, power and pathway? Fringe researchers go further, claiming that mandrake might have been involved in royal rites, perhaps taken by the pharaohs themselves before coronation or burial, to receive visions or communicate with ancestral spirits. The idea isn't far-fetched. If your entire worldview sees death as transformation, and certain plants can open the door, why wouldn't you use them as keys? Back in the garden you come to. The bowl is empty, the altar is bare. You're alone again, but the feeling of connection lingers. It's not fear, it's awe. The kind that makes your spine tingle. Not because you're cold, but because you remember something, even if you can't name it. The moon is higher now, the stars blinking slower, like they're watching you, waiting. Your journey isn't over. The priests haven't spoken, the dancers are still in trance, but from somewhere deeper in the temple a new scent rises, thicker, muskier, and undeniably human. There's laughter, low and rhythmic. You can't tell if it's joyous or dangerous. All you know is that it's pulling you in. Because what comes next isn't about plants or potions. It's about what happens when the body becomes the vessel and the ritual reaches its climax. The laughter is soft at first, distant and teasing, like it's slipping between the cracks of the temple walls. You follow it with a kind of dreamy curiosity, the last dregs of mandrake still making everything feel a little blurred at the edges, like you're moving through candlelight instead of air. You pass down a corridor that narrows, the ceilings lower, the heat thicker. There's incense again, but not kyphi this time. This is something muskier. Resinous, yes, but cut with the unmistakable scent of skin, sweat, and something sharp, like crushed herbs ground under bare feet. It doesn't smell pleasant or unpleasant. It smells alive. You step into a chamber bathed in flickering torchlight, the air humming with breath and rustle and movement. Not dance, more like weaving, like a dozen bodies slowly circling each other, exchanging touches, glances, energy. No masks here, no roaring lionesses or painted falcons. These are humans, stripped down to linen and skin, marked with oils and flowers, adorned not in gold but in scent and sensation. You've walked into a ritual not meant for public view, one where ecstasy isn't just a state of mind but a sacred act. And here, you're not just an observer. This is the hidden domain of Hathor, goddess of love, beauty, music, fertility, and intoxication. Her festivals were wild affairs, full of wine and song and erotic energy. But her temple rites, more complicated. They weren't just celebrations, they were transactions, offerings of the body in exchange for divine blessing, pleasure as prayer. And you, dear traveller, have just been invited into the heart of that altar. A priestess meets your eyes. She's older than you expected, skin like polished bronze and a gaze like smoke, soft but dangerous. She holds a small vial in one hand, opaque and blue like lapis lazuli. She opens it with a flick of her thumb, and the scent hits you instantly. Thick, floral, dizzying. Blue lotus, most likely, but steeped in wine, maybe with a touch of henna or cinnamon oil. She presses a few drops onto your wrists, then rubs her own. The warmth of her fingers spreads through you, as though the scent itself carries memory, or suggestion. Then she begins to move, slowly, hips swaying in time with a drum you can't see. The others mirror her, bodies circling each other in a slow pulse, like waves folding in and out. You follow without thinking. The air is thick with perfume, sweat, and low moans. Not from pleasure exactly, but from surrender. The kind of sound people make when they stop thinking and start feeling, when they give up the script and fall into instinct. In this moment, the ritual becomes more than symbolic. It's physical, sensory, immediate. You realize that the ancient Egyptians didn't separate body and spirit the way modern thought does. To them, every sensation was a doorway. Taste, touch, smell, heat. All sacred, all intentional. The body wasn't a shell to escape. It was a vehicle for transformation. You didn't transcend through denial. You ascended through immersion. And the temple, this sacred space, it was designed for that. Every curve of the wall, every echo of sound, every flicker of torchlight guided the senses toward a kind of awakening. These rites weren't orgies, at least not in the hedonistic sense. They were orchestrations of energy, sacred encounters choreographed to dissolve ego and unify the self with the divine. The priestess moves closer now, her palm pressed to your chest, not pushing, not pulling, just grounding you, reminding you that you're still here, in your body, even as your mind flutters at the edge of something else. She whispers a word you don't recognize. It sinks into your skin like a secret. Around you, the circle tightens, the pace quickens, and for a moment, everyone is breathing as one. There's a historical footnote that comes to mind, one you'd read long ago. a fragment of a text suggesting that temple prostitutes in ancient Egypt weren't simply sex workers but sacred intermediaries, trained to perform rites that healed, blessed, or opened channels between the divine and the human. These women and men were sometimes referred to as servants of the goddess, and their role was far more spiritual than transactional. This wasn't forbidden behaviour. It was state-sanctioned, priest-led, and deeply encoded into the architecture of belief. Of course, modern scholars still debate the truth of that. Some argue that the idea of sacred sex in Egypt is more myth than fact, exaggerated by Greek historians with an appetite for scandal. Others counter that while prostitution did exist in the secular sense, certain sexual rites within temple contexts were indeed real, though deeply veiled in symbolism and ritual. The truth? Probably somewhere in between. But as you sway with the others now, caught in that golden haze where time ceases to move in straight lines, you understand something deeper than evidence. Whatever this is, ecstasy, spirituality, theatre, it works. Your awareness expands. You feel your heartbeat not just in your chest, but in your hands, your feet, the space between your fingers. Everything hums. The walls seem to breathe with you. A young man steps into the centre of the group, blindfolded and marked with henna. Two priestesses circle him, touching his shoulders, murmuring words you don't understand but feel in your spine. This is a moment of initiation. He's not afraid. He's ready. And as they lower him to the stone floor, you realise the rite isn't about sex. It's about trust, surrender, letting go of control in front of others, in a space where vulnerability is the currency of the sacred. Later, when the rhythm slows and the bodies lie still, you sit against the wall, chest still rising fast. You're covered in a light sheen of sweat, your skin perfumed, your mind altered. Not high in the recreational sense, high in the way mountaintops feel, exposed, honest, small but powerful. You look around at the quiet aftermath, bodies curled against each other like vines, the torches sputtering lower, the scent of lotus and musk still thick in your lungs. This wasn't about indulgence, it was about return, about touching something ancient in yourself and remembering what it feels like to be more than thought, more than skin, more than fear. But your journey isn't done yet, because even deeper inside this temple lies a chamber few are allowed to enter, a place reserved for those who need to go beyond sensation and surrender, where snakes coil, where spells hum, where magic, venom, and vision blur into one. The floor cools beneath your bare feet as you leave the warmth of the ritual chamber. Behind you, the air still vibrates with breath and pulse, but ahead, down a narrow hallway carved into the bedrock, the silence is dense, pressing in like cloth soaked in oil. This part of the temple feels different, older, no murals, no torches, just the faintest glow from somewhere deeper, flickering like the last memory of a dream. You keep moving, drawn by something you can't name but absolutely trust, at least for now. The passageway ends at a low black doorway. Not grand, not ceremonial, almost hidden. A priest stands to one side, head bowed, his hand resting on a long curved staff carved with twin cobras. You nod, unsure what you're agreeing to, and he steps aside. The door creaks open on ancient bronze hinges, and suddenly you're stepping into another world, one where the walls glisten as if freshly painted with oil, and the air is so thick it sticks to your throat. This is the serpent's chamber, is not metaphorical. Real snakes, long, slick, and gleaming like polished obsidian, move in slow spirals across the stone floor and along shallow channels carved around the edges of the room. You freeze instinctively, breath caught somewhere between awe and panic. But the snakes pay you no mind. They move like incense smoke, without urgency, without fear, sacred, intentional. A priestess kneels near the largest, humming low, her hands slowly guiding the creature along a track in the floor etched with hieroglyphs. The snake slides over each symbol like it's reading with its belly. This is where magic, Heka, was performed in its purest form. Here, words weren't just sounds, they were tools, weapons, portals. This chamber wasn't about worship, it was about command, transformation. You watch as the priestess stands, a bowl of milky liquid in one hand and a bundle of herbs in the other. She dips the bundle, squeezes it, then drinks. The smell hits you a second later, bitter, pungent, and strangely metallic. Henbane, maybe, or black nightshade. Perhaps even crushed scorpions in wine. Yes, that was a thing. Venom, poison, and trance were closely intertwined in these rituals. The Egyptians didn't fear snakes the way modern minds do. They saw them as protectors, as holders of secret power. Wadjet, the cobra goddess, was carved onto crowns and temple lintels as a sign of fierce divine authority. Serpent magic wasn't about destruction, it was about access, about controlling what others feared, and using that fear to walk between worlds. You step farther in. The air grows colder. One of the snakes lifts its head and seems to watch you. Not with curiosity, but with expectation. The priestess motions you to kneel near a stone basin carved into the floor. Inside is a strange paste, greenish, gritty, and flecked with gold. She dips 2 fingers in and draws a line from the centre of your forehead to the tip of your nose, then whispers something so quietly it doesn't register as sound. You don't know what's in the paste, but your skin tingles almost immediately. Cool first, then burning, then electric. Like mint and fire had a child and smeared it on your face. This is a spell of vision, of unravelling the seen world. In ancient medical texts like the Eber's Papyrus, there are recipes involving snake fat, lion's milk, crushed insects, and plant resins used in ointments for the eyes, the temples, the tongue. Some of these were purely medicinal, meant to cure infections, calm fevers. Others were clearly symbolic. To see like Ra, or speak like Thoth, wasn't just poetry. It was a declaration of magical alignment. You weren't just being healed, you were being prepared, tuned. You lie back on a stone slab. Above you, the ceiling is painted with stars, not metaphorical ones, but actual constellations, arranged in a spiral that mimics the night sky in midwinter. The priestess begins to chant, and the room seems to throb with her voice. Not just volume, it's in the vibration. You feel it in your chest, your teeth, your gut. The words are meaningless to you, and yet somehow not. The snakes move in a perfect circle around the slab. Their tails flick occasionally, tapping stone in rhythm with the chanting. Your vision blurs, then sharpens. Colours seem to bloom from shadows. Your hands feel distant, your body heavier, or maybe lighter. Time begins to split. One version of you lies here, breath rising and falling in rhythm with the room. Another walks across a desert under stars. A third is standing in a field full of blue lotuses the size of dinner plates. The priestess's voice is now 1,000 voices, and your body becomes a drum played by invisible hands. You understand suddenly what the ancient Egyptians meant when they said that the ka, the vital spirit, could separate from the body during ritual. You're not dead, but you've stepped into the same river. These rituals, with their potions and poisons and chants, weren't mock theatre. They were tools for soul travel, and the snake, coiled in so many tomb paintings, wasn't just protection. It was the symbol of the path. Dangerous, silent, winding. Modern scholars still argue over the role of these rituals. Some claim they were metaphorical, dramatic retellings of myths. Others believe they were deeply psychedelic experiences aided by real pharmacology and neurochemical manipulation. The line between magic and medicine in Egypt is paper thin, and this room, it's the creased edge where both pages meet. A final whisper reaches your ear, directly, intimately. You can't tell if it came from the priestess or the snake or something deeper, but it says only this: now you're ready. Ready for what exactly? The spell ends. The silence drops like a curtain. The snakes retreat, vanishing into grooves along the walls. The stars above fade into soot and stone. You sit up slowly, the residue of the paste still tingling on your skin. The priestess bows and leaves without a word. You rise and exit the chamber, blinking into the dim light of the corridor, the vision still echoing behind your eyes. You don't speak. There's no one to speak to. But inside, you know something has shifted. You pass again through the courtyard, where the moon now sits directly overhead. In the far distance you hear music, flutes and lyres, gentle and slow. You follow. The dead are gathering, and tonight you're invited to walk among them. You follow the sound without urgency, though something inside you pulls tight, as if sensing you're heading somewhere important, somewhere final. The music isn't loud. It's soft and winding, like a lullaby meant to be heard just beneath consciousness. The corridor opens into a garden unlike the others. No blooming flowers here, no splashes of blue or gold, just shadows, stone jars, worn statues with faces long smoothed by wind and time. This is a garden of the dead, not in a spooky horror movie way. It's still and reverent, the air full of earth and memory. At the centre is a circular plot, sunken slightly, with rows of strange squat plants growing in careful lines. The leaves are broad and drooping, thick with dew that reflects what little starlight seeps in through a stone slit overhead. You recognise it immediately from old herbal manuscripts and museum illustrations. Mandrake, again. But here, it's cultivated, worshipped almost. This isn't just a plant. This is a shrine. You kneel near one of the rows and the smell rises. Earthy, musky, with a faint trace of decay. Not rotten, just rooted. The kind of scent that says, something is buried here, and it's not just a plant. A priest tending the garden doesn't acknowledge you directly. He hums softly, cradling a flowerless mandrake root like it's a baby or a relic. His hands are stained from the soil, dark and damp, and he has a small knife tucked into his belt made of ivory, not metal. No one is speaking, but something is being told here. Something old. The mandrake is having a moment. Again. Unlike your earlier encounter, this isn't about drawing out visions or testing your senses. This is about transition, guiding the soul from life to what comes after. The Egyptians believed in a deeply intricate system of death and rebirth. Dying wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a long, perilous journey through the Duat, the underworld, filled with gates and monsters and riddles. Your spirit needed help, ammunition, passwords, maps, but it also needed a little chemical assistance. Some fringe Egyptologists believe that mandrake was used in funerary preparations, not just as a symbol of fertility or rebirth, but as an actual psychoactive given to the dying or the recently dead. You heard that right. Given to the dead, or perhaps applied by the living to open a channel, a link, like a phone call that rings both ways. Imagine priests or family members sitting beside the body, chanting, smudging with incense, applying mandrake paste to the lips or eyes, not for healing, but for communication. You look toward a stone altar in the centre of the garden where a wrapped body lies. It isn't decayed, it's part of a ceremony, you realise, a symbolic corpse used in a rite of passage. Around it, priests walk in slow circles, trailing smoke from bundles of dried herbs. One dips a mandrake root into a bowl of wine, then lets it drip onto the linen wrappings. It's not morbid, it's serene, like dressing a traveller for the road. You sit and watch, silent, understanding more with each breath. The ancient Egyptians believed that the soul had many parts, Ka, Ba, Ak and others, all requiring different kinds of care after death. Mandrake, with its unique shape and mind-altering properties, was a natural bridge. Its human-like root made it symbolically perfect as a stand-in for the body. Its psychoactive effects made it a candidate for opening consciousness, whether in the dying, the mourners, or the guides. Was it hallucination? Was it a spiritual phone line? Scholars can't agree. Some dismiss the whole idea. They point out that mandrake's effects can be erratic and dangerous. Too much, and it's not vision, it's poison. Delirium, seizures, even death. They argue it would have been too risky for regular use, but others counter, wasn't that the point? In small, sacred doses, danger itself becomes a doorway, a line to be crossed under supervision, with chants and oil and ancient names whispered into smoke. A low chant begins, one voice at first, then joined by others in intervals like waves crashing on a soft shore. It's not a dirge, it's more like a welcome, soft and low and strangely joyful. A celebration not of life lost, but of a journey beginning. A priestess opens a jar and begins rubbing oil, infused with mandrake and lotus by the smell, on the feet of the symbolic corpse. You notice now the feet are not bound, they are left bare, ready to walk. You're handed a small cup, the liquid dark and syrupy. You hesitate. You've tasted mandrake before, but this feels different. This isn't for visions, this is to connect. You sip, and the taste is deeply bitter, then floral, then oddly metallic. Your stomach tightens, but not in pain, in alertness. Something is happening again, shifting. You feel the grass beneath you breathe, the stars pulse above like lanterns. Suddenly the altar doesn't seem empty. The symbolic corpse turns its head, just slightly, not jerking, not dramatic, just a twitch. You blink. Nothing changes. Maybe nothing moved. Maybe something arrived instead. Your body sways with the chanting. You feel others behind you, sitting in the dark, faces you don't recognize. Or maybe you do. Ancestors, spirits, shadows. You're not sure, but you're not afraid. They're not here to haunt. They're here to witness. You begin to understand why these rituals mattered so much. Death wasn't a moment. It was a conversation, and that conversation needed tools. The mandrake, the oil, the chant. Without them, the soul wandered, confused, lost. But with them, it had a guide, a song to follow, a doorway to pass through. And as the ceremony ends and the priests begin to cover the mandrake plants with light cloths to protect them from the wind, you rise, slow and steady. The symbolic body remains, the scent of oil lingers, and you walk away with the heavy, holy feeling of someone who's been part of something older than memory. You pass through another gate carved with Anubis's jackal face, and the world feels lighter again. Not easier, but clearer. Somewhere ahead you hear laughter. Real laughter this time, unfiltered and wild. The gods are drinking, and they've saved you a seat. The sound hits you before the smell. Bright, ringing laughter that bounces off stone like sunlight off water. It's not the echo of madness or mockery. It's joy, raw, unrestrained, probably a little too loud for sacred spaces. But that's the point. The energy is different here. Gone is the heavy silence of the serpent chamber, or the sombre grace of the death garden. What greets you now is chaos dressed in silk and wine. You follow the sound through a wide arch and step into a hall unlike any you've seen so far, open to the sky, warm with torchlight, pulsing with music, movement and perfume so rich it almost sticks to your skin. Welcome to the Sanctuary of Hathor, again, but this time it's not about solemn rites or heady oils. This is celebration. This is the part of the religion they don't whisper about. They sing it, shout it, live it. Temple walls painted in ochre and turquoise surround the open courtyard, but your eyes barely register them. All focus is drawn to the swirling dancers, the clapping hands, the bodies collapsing with laughter around low tables piled high with dates, figs, bread, and enormous clay jugs of something dark and foaming. Wine, maybe, or beer, or both, married in some divine concoction that's equal parts history and hallucination. A priestess, cheeks flushed and linen robes clinging to her from sweat, catches your eye and gestures for you to join. You hesitate, still carrying the solemnity of the last ritual in your spine, but the energy is infectious. You sit on a cushion, and a cup is pressed into your hand immediately. It's warm, spiced with something, honey, cinnamon, and something floral beneath it, maybe lotus or mandrake again, but diluted. You take a sip. The effect is fast, not in your head, but in your body. Your chest loosens, your face warms, someone brushes past you and you smile before you know why. This isn't just a party, this is the festival of drunkenness. You've heard the stories, how once a year followers of Hathor would gather by the thousands, camped outside her temples dressed in their finest, ready to drink themselves into oblivion. But not for fun, for communion. The goal wasn't a good time. The goal was to reach the edge of the self, and fall, laughing, into the arms of the goddess. It all traces back to that famous myth. Remember when Sekhmet, the lioness aspect of Hathor, went on a bloodthirsty rampage and nearly wiped out humanity? The gods tricked her by dyeing beer red and pouring it across the desert. She drank, thinking it was blood, became drunk, fell asleep, and woke as Hathor again, gentler, radiant, forgiving. The story may sound like myth, but this annual festival was very real. Thousands gathered, and the drinking began at sunrise. By sunset, they weren't just tipsy. They were gone. Laughing, weeping, dancing, possessed. Modern scholars try to wrap their heads around it. Was it just mass intoxication? A ritualized bender? Or did it serve a deeper purpose? Some say it was a symbolic reenactment, an annual chance to purge the year's sins, violence and rage through divine excess. Others argue it was a fertility rite, unlocking primal energies through the loosening of inhibition. And then there are the fringe thinkers, always fun at parties, who believe that the drink was laced with psychoactive herbs, lotus or otherwise, designed to catalyse visions, not just drunkenness. You take another sip of your drink, and the edges of the night blur again. The music shifts. Flutes now, soft and winding, layered with the throaty rhythm of drums played with fingertips instead of fists. A man beside you slaps the table and bursts into a laugh so loud it startles you. Until you join him, no idea why, except that it feels right. Someone stands in the centre of the space now, arms raised, eyes wide, robes soaked. She begins to sing, not words, not even syllables, just tones, pure sound, rising and falling like waves in a storm. The crowd falls silent, not out of politeness, but reverence. The energy tightens. This isn't just a drunk girl putting on a show, this is channeling, possession. She's becoming Hathor, or letting Hathor borrow her bones. Her voice becomes a storm, and you feel it in your gut, vibrating through your drink and your ribs and your very breath. Then, just as suddenly, she drops to the ground. Laughter erupts again. The tension releases like a drum snapping. Wine splashes. Hands reach to lift her up. She smiles, dazed but delighted. You feel your heartbeat pounding behind your eyes. A priest kneels beside you, offering a smaller cup this time. Smoke curling from its surface. You sniff it and blink. Strong. Definitely infused with something. You drink. Slow. And the taste is immediate and sharp. Cloves, pepper, and something bitter that numbs your tongue. Within minutes your surroundings seem to shimmer like heat waves on stone. Not spinning, just alive. The music is too perfect. The stars blink too clearly. You're not drunk, not exactly. You're slipping, sinking. This, you realise, is the purpose. To get high enough, drunk enough, loose enough that the goddess can reach you. Not through logic or lecture, but through vibration. Through laughter, through sweat, through letting go. You're part of the ritual now. Your breath joins the chorus, your skin tingles, and your mind drifts. Not away from yourself, but into yourself, into some vast, infinite hallway lined with golden mirrors, each reflecting a version of you you've never seen. You are laughing, weeping, shouting, singing, collapsing, rebirthing. This is what the Egyptians understood, that intoxication, under the right circumstances with the right intention, wasn't an escape, it was a return. The festival moves around you like a tide. People come and go, the music changes, the flutes fade, the stars tilt slightly in their beds, and you remain, grounded and floating all at once, unsure of how long you've been here, or how much longer you'll stay. And then the music stops. Everyone freezes. In the quiet, a sound rises. Not human, not animal. A low, distant hum. You feel it before you hear it. It vibrates the stone beneath your hands. Somewhere deeper in the temple, another doorway opens, and the sky is calling. The hum rises like a low tide pulling everything inward, not loud, but inescapable. You feel it in your ribs first, then your teeth, then deep in the soles of your feet. Around you, the celebration still lingers, but it's faded into a warm afterglow. The laughter is quieted. The dancers are resting, sprawled in pools of moonlight, sweat glistening on their skin. You stand, dizzy but steady, and follow the vibration down a passage half hidden behind a drapery of embroidered linen. No one stops you. In fact, the priestess leaning near the arch gives you a nod that says, "You're exactly where you're meant to be." This passage is colder, narrower, and steeper than the others. You descend slowly, your fingers brushing the wall for balance. That humming sound grows more complex the deeper you go, layered now with high, shimmering overtones, like metal strings plucked by invisible fingers. It's not music exactly, but it feels organised, intentional. And underneath it all, barely audible, is a low buzz like bees in the walls. You emerge into a small circular room lit by a single oil lamp. At the centre is a pedestal carved from limestone, and on it, a faded stone relief of a poppy. Not a full bouquet. Just one, its petals drooping slightly, its stem curved like a question mark. The room smells faintly sweet, with an undercurrent of something sharper, like dried herbs, wine-soaked linen, and old medicine. You're not surprised to see it. You've been expecting it in a way. This is the room of the Pyarium poppy. Now let's be clear. The presence of opium in ancient Egypt is a hotly debated subject. Some scholars argue there's little concrete evidence for its use before the Greeks brought it in. Others point to archaeological finds, poppy-shaped vessels in tombs, residue in canopic jars, or even traces found in the hair of some mummies. It's all tantalising, but nothing definitive. Still, when you're standing in a stone room dedicated to a flower carved with such reverence, the possibility doesn't seem so far-fetched. A priest stands by the wall, motionless until you notice him. Then he walks to a jar and opens it carefully, revealing a dark, tar-like substance. He doesn't speak, just dips a thin reed into the resin and holds it to a flame for a few seconds until it starts to bubble. The scent is immediate, sweet, smoky, and heavy. You breathe it in, not deeply, just enough to taste it in the back of your throat. It's unfamiliar, but not unpleasant. The priest offers you a small cushion and gestures for you to sit. You do, heart calm, mind open. This isn't party mode. This is something else entirely, a descent inward. You sit in silence as the resin smokes gently on the reed. You're not told what it is, or how much to inhale. The room offers no instruction manual, no chant, no ritual performance, only presence, only potential. You breathe again, and something shifts. You don't feel high in the modern sense. There's no rush, no swirl of hallucinations. It's more like you've stepped into a version of yourself with the volume turned down, the hum of anxiety, lower, the buzz of thoughts, softer. Time stretches, your eyelids droop. You become aware of your breath, not just in your nose, but in your chest, your spine, even your fingertips. Every inhale is a wave. Every exhale erases something heavy. Images flicker across the walls of your mind. Not memories, impressions. Gold crowns melting into sunlight. A mother cradling a baby made of starlight. A pyramid opening like a flower at dusk. You understand none of it, and all of it. It's not a message, it's a state. Now, let's be honest. The evidence of opium use in ancient Egyptian religion is flimsy by academic standards, but ancient medicine lists sleep-inducing compounds, and poppy images appear in art and funerary items. Could they have harvested opium from local varieties or imported it from further east? Possibly. Could they have used it in rites for healing, death, or divination? Certainly within the realm of speculation. Some fringe theories even suggest that priest-physicians used opium in dream incubation rituals, helping the sick or spiritually burdened enter deep, deep, vision-rich sleep to receive divine answers. Whether true or not, you're living the theory now. Your limbs feel weighted with warm sand. The flame seems impossibly bright, though you don't need to look at it. The room begins to shift in your senses, not spinning or warping, but softening. The stone becomes warm, the air becomes silk. You're both here and somewhere far above it, watching yourself sit with eyes half closed and breath steady. You wonder, what does it mean to truly listen to the gods? To seek them not in dogma, but in stillness? Maybe this was the point all along, not the dancing or the drinking or the chants, but the space afterward. The part where everything goes quiet and the answers arrive unspoken. Time passes, or maybe it doesn't. Eventually the priest touches your shoulder just once. You blink. The lamp flickers. The air feels cooler again. You stand slowly, every joint loose, every breath long and deep. You don't feel drugged. You feel like you've been in deep water and only now reached the surface. You follow him out in silence. Back in the corridor, the hum has faded. You leave the poppy chamber like waking from a shared dream. Were you high? Maybe. Were you in touch with something ancient and vast? Definitely. Did the Egyptians know something we've forgotten? Or just name something we can't? It doesn't matter now. Because as you walk forward, footsteps silent on cool stone, a low chuckle reaches your ears. It's not joyful or mocking, it's clever, knowing. The gods are waiting, and one of them is a trickster. The laugh finds you first, low, curling at the edges, like it's been following you for miles just out of sight. It's not the wild revelry of Hathor's feast, Or the blissed-out hum of the opium chamber? No, this laugh has sharp teeth. It sounds like it knows more than it should. And it's waiting. You follow it cautiously, winding down a torchlit hallway whose walls narrow the farther you go, like the throat of a snake tightening around your intentions. The torches are strange here. They flicker blue at the tips, casting light that isn't warm but cool, almost eerie. A chill skates along your skin. At the end of the hall you find the chamber, not marked by grandeur but mischief. Statues line the walls, each one different but familiar. A monkey with a grinning face, a man with a bent back, hunched as if giggling mid-prank, a cobra with a crown askew. But the centrepiece is unmistakable. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, scribes, and hidden knowledge. But tonight his eyes seem amused, and he's not alone. A second figure shares the space, less refined, more chaotic. Set. You know the name, even if the face confuses you. The god of storms, deserts, and disorder, but also of protection, strangely enough. No one in Egyptian mythology is ever just one thing. That's the point. Gods were contradictions embodied, and tonight, you're surrounded by them. You step closer, drawn to a long table covered in what looks like playing pieces, circular discs, carved animals, tiny ivory cubes. It's a game, but not one you know. A priest stands nearby with a sly grin and gestures to the table. You understand without words. To pass through this chamber you must play. You sit. The priest pushes a small bowl toward you filled with something dark and sticky. Honey? Resin? You dip a finger in. The taste is shockingly sweet, but it burns as it slides down your throat. Peppery, herbaceous, and definitely laced with something potent. You blink, and the walls twitch ever so slightly. The statues seem to lean in. What did they just give you? Could be a mixture of myrrh and wine, a common temple offering, or perhaps something less documented. Something from the apothecary's more secret shelves. Ancient Egyptian texts mention mysterious tonics for mental clarity, memory, or to open the tongue of prophecy. One recipe even includes a mash of crushed beetles, pomegranate seeds, and mandrake pulp. A little gross, yes, but effective? Possibly. Your opponent moves a piece across the board. The rules aren't explained. You follow instinct. It becomes clear. This game isn't about winning. It's about seeing. Each move opens something. An image, a memory, a fear. Not hallucinations exactly. More like waking dreams stitched into the moment. On your third move, you remember the first time you felt time slow, like really slow, as a kid staring out a classroom window. On the fifth move, your mother's face appears, not in front of you, but behind your eyelids. She's laughing. Something about a spilled drink. You never remembered that moment before now. This is how Thoth teaches, not with lessons, but through revelations disguised as distractions. He is the god of scribes, but also of dreams. Of language, yes, but also of nonsense. He invented writing, they say, but also the power to confuse. His is the mind that ties knots in logic just to see who can untangle them. You wonder, is this game about testing your memory or planting new ones? You lose track of time. Eventually the priest calls the game done. No winner, no loser, you're simply done. He smiles again, wider this time, and gestures toward a large scroll near the back wall. You step forward. The scroll is partially unrolled, revealing rows of glyphs you can't read, except you can. Suddenly, somehow, the shapes begin to make sense. Not phonetically, but emotionally. Each symbol hits a nerve, as if it speaks to some buried part of your psyche. The scroll tells a story. A god trapped by his own cleverness. A human who made a joke so perfect it made a goddess laugh herself into existence. A king who drank ink to understand birdsong. None of this makes sense, and yet all of it feels true. You laugh. Not because it's funny, because it feels good. Like something inside you has been unknotted. That laugh, the one that lured you here, rises again. You realise now it's yours, and theirs, and everyone's, shared and ancient. You begin to understand. In ancient Egypt, humour wasn't separate from the sacred. Trickster gods weren't villains. They were necessary. They kept the world flexible, reminded people not to cling too tightly to the script. And sometimes, the divine spoke not in thunder, but in puns. There's a fringe theory that the Egyptians used humour, ritualised humour, as a way of inducing altered states. That laughter was part of temple ceremonies, not an accident, a strategy. Laughter releases endorphins, relaxes the nervous system, opens the mind, makes you receptive. Scholars have argued that certain processions featured sacred clowns, meant to mock the rigidity of the court or the high priesthood in carefully measured doses. Controlled chaos. Divine comedy. You step away from the scroll and feel something lift off your shoulders. You're lighter now, not just physically, but mentally. Like all the weight of the previous chambers, the mandrake, the incense, the solemnity of death has been laughed off, not diminished, but softened. You look once more at the two figures, Thoth and Set, wisdom and chaos, order and interruption, and you understand why they're paired in this room. You can't ascend without stumbling. You can't know without a knowing first. And the gods? They're not always serious. Sometimes they're giggling behind their masks. You exit the chamber, that low laugh still echoing down the hall. But outside, the air shifts again. Warmer, brighter. You smell jasmine. You hear music, harps and clapping and rhythmic movement. Something lively is waiting, and it's very, very small. You step out into a courtyard that seems to defy the scale of everything you've seen so far. It's not vast or towering or grand. It's intimate, tucked into a crook of the temple architecture like a secret smile. The stone underfoot is worn smooth, and the air smells of citrus blossoms and something faintly sugary, like dates left too long in the sun. But what really draws your eye, what makes you blink twice and then laugh a little, is the size of the figures gathered in the centre of the space. They are small, not child-sized, not miniature, but unmistakably, deliberately short. Dwarves. You don't know what to expect, but the mood here is electric. One man claps his hands and spins on one foot, making a whooping sound that echoes with joy. Another shakes a rattle with complex rhythm, his fingers moving faster than your eyes can track. And there, at the far end of the courtyard, a woman in bright layered linen leaps into the air and lands with a thunderclap of bare feet. It's impossible not to smile. The whole place hums with mischief and purpose. This is a performance, yes, but it's also a ritual. You can feel it in the air, focused, sacred, old. These dancers, dwarves and small-statured individuals, aren't here for entertainment. They're temple artists, divine technicians. Their movements are precise, stylized, and somehow magical, literally. In ancient Egypt, dwarves held a unique position in society. Unlike in many other ancient cultures, they weren't mocked or marginalized. They were revered, associated with magic, birth, and divine favour. Names like Bez and Tar come to mind. Bez especially. The lion-faced, dwarf-bodied protector of households, women in childbirth, music and dreams. He wasn't a sleek god. He was a party starter and a demon chaser, grinning wide with wild hair and a fat tongue sticking out. And his earthly representatives? Dwarves and dancers. A priest steps beside you and whispers, "Watch carefully. They're not just moving, they're changing things." You turn back and look again. The lead dancer begins a slow, rhythmic series of steps. Heel, toe, spin, crouch, leap. As she moves, her fingers draw shapes in the air, looping invisible glyphs through the smoke from a burning cone of resin nearby. Each shape seems to shimmer just for a moment before vanishing. Behind her, two others mirror her steps, then break into their own pattern. One flicking a tiny sistrum, the other stamping his feet in triple-time bursts. And now something starts to happen. You feel it first in your ears, a soft ringing, like you've just entered a place that resonates at a frequency you've never heard before. Then your vision shifts. Nothing dramatic, just brighter, crisper. The torches flare for a moment. The dancers blur slightly at the edges, like their movements are leaving after images. You realise they're not performing for you. They're performing for something else, something watching from behind the curtain of normal sight. Some researchers call this kind of experience kinesthetic magic, the idea that ritual movement can alter reality, shift consciousness, invite divine presence. And the Egyptians? They were masters of it. Dancers weren't just artists, they were spiritual instruments. Their bodies carried prayers and intentions the way a priest's voice carried hymns. They didn't just entertain, they invoked. You watch as the lead dancer suddenly drops into a crouch, then springs into a spin so fast you lose track of her face. The fire flares again. There's a gust of wind, but no one moves. The dancers are now frozen in a tableau, arms extended, heads tilted in exaggerated expressions of joy, awe, and wild laughter. The energy in the room holds for one long breath, and then releases. Just like that, everything softens. The dancers bow, the priest claps softly, you exhale without realizing you were holding your breath. Your skin tingles. The priest beside you smiles. They open the way. To what, you ask? He shrugs like the answer's obvious. To everything. And here's the quirky detail. Dwarves were often employed as jewelers, musicians, and keepers of sacred animals. Their presence wasn't accidental. It was believed that their bodies were touched by the divine. Compressed, yes, but dense with magical energy. In a land obsessed with symmetry and proportion, their difference was honoured, not erased, especially in magic. Some fringe historians believe there were entire cults built around dancers like these, secret orders that trained in movement-based ritual from childhood, preserving ancient unspoken traditions too potent for ink and papyrus. Were they true magicians, shamans, performers with a flair for the dramatic? Probably all of the above. You sit on the edge of a low wall watching as the performers begin to pack away their instruments, hand drums, bronze clappers, tiny wooden flutes. One of them catches your eye and tosses a carved figurine your way. You catch it. It's a miniature Bez, grinning up at you with that same mad energy, tongue out, eyes wide. "Keep him close," the dancer says with a wink. "He likes you." You slip the figurine into your pouch. It feels warm somehow, not heated, just alive. The air in the courtyard has changed again. Softer. Still, but not empty. Like something important has passed through, and now the world has to settle around its wake. You look toward the far archway, where a wide hallway leads deeper into the temple complex. There's no music now, no dancing, but you hear something else. Pages turning, a voice muttering. The dead are speaking again, and this time they've left instructions. You follow the murmur of voices, soft and layered, like the sound of wind rifling through. 100 scrolls at once. The dancers fade behind you, their barefoot shuffling leaving only the faint echo of a rhythm in your memory. Now, the corridor you're walking feels more like a library than a temple, though you don't see any shelves. Just walls carved floor to ceiling with dense, deliberate hieroglyphs, each symbol arranged in vertical columns like strings of divine code. You reach a chamber where the air feels heavier, thicker somehow, like it's holding its breath. You step in, and the room lights itself, not with torches, but with a blue glow that seems to seep from the very stone. In the centre sits a rectangular platform, its edges etched with gold leaf inscriptions, and atop it lies a large papyrus scroll, half unrolled, revealing rows of vivid illustrations in colour so preserved it could have been painted yesterday. This is the Book of the Dead, or at least one copy of it, though the Egyptians never actually called it that. Its proper name is more poetic, the Book of Coming Forth by Day. Not a grim eulogy, but a manual for transcendence, and you're about to read it the way it was meant to be read. Not as an artifact, but as a map for the soul. You crouch beside the platform, eyes scanning the figures. A human figure with arms raised in praise. A jackal-headed god weighing a tiny white heart against a feather. A crocodile-headed creature lurking beneath the scales. These aren't fairy tales. They're navigation tools for the afterlife. Every line of this book is a spell, an incantation, a survival tip for the journey beyond death. And now, you're going to take that journey. A priest enters the room, draped not in linen, but in deep indigo robes trimmed with gold. His skin glows with a faint sheen of oil, and he carries a censer that smokes with something less pleasant than kyphi. This stuff is sharper, acrid, like burnt citrus peel and crushed bone. He moves in a slow circle, murmuring in a language you don't recognize but understand anyway. Not with your ears, with something older. He gestures to a seat carved into the wall. You sit. He hands you a shallow dish of dark liquid. You hesitate, of course. That's becoming your ritual now, but you drink it. It's bitter, earthy. You recognize hints of myrrh and blue lotus again, but something else hums beneath it. Something metallic. Your vision doesn't blur, it sharpens. You look at the scroll again, and this time, The figures begin to move. The scales tip. The feather rises. The crocodile growls. And then you're not sitting anymore. You're standing at the gates of the Duat. The Egyptian underworld is not a place of punishment. It's a trial, a vast, surreal dimension filled with rivers of fire, fields of reeds, mountains made of crystal, and doors that only open when you know the correct words. It is a landscape designed to confuse, test, and ultimately transform. You're walking now, barefoot over sand that pulses like it's alive. In the sky, above you, stars swirl in tight circles, casting more shadow than light. A sphinx speaks to you in riddles. You answer instinctively, your mouth forming syllables you've never learned. You pass. You cross a lake where the water is ink and your reflection keeps changing. Young, old, child, stranger. You nod and keep going. You reach the Hall of Judgment. Anubis awaits, tall and calm, black jackal face unreadable. He gestures to the scale. Your heart materializes in your hand. You offer it without hesitation. The feather of Maat floats beside it. The scale trembles. And then, balance. You're not judged. You're revealed. A door opens, and there, in the distance, is the field of reeds. The Egyptian paradise. Not clouds and halos, but an eternal harvest. Sunlight without heat. Fields without end. Water everywhere. Fresh and pure. In this place, the dead live again. They farm, they laugh, they are whole. No suffering, no decay. And most importantly, they remember who they were, who they loved, what they believed. It's beautiful. It's terrifying, because part of you wants to stay. But then a wind sweeps through the field, lifting your hair, pulling your gaze upward. The priest's voice calls you back. Your eyes blink open, and the chamber reappears. The glow dimmer now, the scroll re-rolled by unseen hands. The priest offers no smile, no explanation. He simply nods and places a small amulet in your palm. It's the shape of an ankh, life, but not ordinary life, eternal life, the kind that doesn't need to be proven, only remembered. You leave the chamber quietly, the amulet still warm in your hand. Now you understand something that no book or professor or documentary could explain. The Egyptians didn't just believe in an afterlife, they trained for it, prepared, practiced. They rehearsed death like a performance, not because they feared it, but because they respected the journey it required. They had maps, chants, incense, spells, and yes, plant allies to smooth the path. There's scholarly debate, of course. Some argue that these rites were metaphorical, psychological comforts for the grieving. Others say they were functional spiritual technologies designed to do exactly what they claimed, get your soul from point A to point B. But the line between symbolism and science. The Egyptians never drew it. To them, every symbol was real. Every real thing was symbolic. It all mattered. You step back into the corridor, heart steady, steps light. Something has shifted in you. You're not dead, but you have walked the path. You have glimpsed the field, and now the temple calls again. But this time, it doesn't want your soul. It wants your senses. You've walked with the dead, tasted wine infused with gods, and laughed with tricksters. But now the temple pulls you back into your body, not with heat or motion, but with scent. Thick, velvety and decadent, it curls through the corridor like a lover's finger tracing your jaw. It catches you by the nose and refuses to let go. It's not the dry, crisp incense from the halls of judgment, nor the smoky kyphi that lulled you into your first haze. This is richer, heavier, exotic, the kind of scent that makes your vision tunnel and your heartbeat thrum in your throat. You follow it down a narrow hallway, darker this time, the torches burning lower, slower, like they too are hypnotized. The smell gets stronger. You feel it in your teeth, at the back of your tongue. It has notes of honey and black pepper, cinnamon bark, crushed pine, and something animal, musk, maybe. Or something older, like skin after a thunderstorm. At the end of the corridor you find a low chamber wrapped in shadow and gold. The walls are painted with oversized flowers, lotus, mandrake and something else that resembles frankincense trees with gnarled limbs and dark sap dripping from their bark. There are bowls everywhere, shallow bronze dishes and alabaster jars, each filled with some thick, shimmering substance: oils, pastes, perfumed resins. A woman kneels in the centre of the room, stripping leaves into a heated dish, her hands slow and practiced. When she looks up at you, her eyes are ringed with thick black coal that shimmers green in the firelight. You've stepped into the world of Egyptian perfumery, and you didn't come alone. Behind you, another figure enters, cloaked in linen soaked so deeply in scent you can smell it before he even speaks. The priest and the perfumer nod to each other. This is no side ritual, this is a full-blown sensory rite. You're about to smell your way to the divine. The Egyptians treated scent as sacred. Not smell good for the gods sacred, transform your consciousness sacred. Fragrance was more than hygiene, it was magic, medicine, memory. The ancient word for perfume, senature, literally means that which makes divine. Every scent had a purpose, a direction, a resonance. And here, in this small golden chamber, those purposes are being distilled drop by precious drop. The priest hands you a vial. You uncork it, and instantly the world narrows. This scent doesn't just smell, it speaks. You see flashes. A woman grinding cinnamon bark on a stone slab while singing a hymn to Hathor. A priest rubbing myrrh on a corpse's tongue so he can speak truth in the afterlife. A child clutching a wax perfume cone as it melts slowly down her hair, releasing blue lotus and henna oil during a family feast. This vial is memory. The perfumer places a warm towel across your face and begins anointing your feet with oil. It's citrusy at first, but then mellows into something woody, almost resinous. You breathe deeply, and your chest feels like it's been rubbed with fire and velvet. You are not calm. You're activated. And then comes the final fragrance. She lights a piece of resin on a golden plate, and the smoke that rises is unlike anything you've smelled before. Sweet, sour, electric. It coils through the chamber and kisses the base of your spine. Your skin flushes, your eyes water. What is this? You don't ask aloud. The answer comes anyway. Stacked. One of the most mysterious and sacred substances in the Egyptian pharmacopoeia. Some scholars equate it with myrrh, others insist it's something lost, an extinct plant, or a blend that no modern nose could replicate. It appears in temple formulas, always near the top of the list. And here, it's burning. You sit cross-legged now, the towel still draped over your head, the scents working into your lungs like prayer. You can't tell if you're sweating or crying. The sensation is like floating inside your own skin. Every part of your body feels like it has been dusted in gold and stitched back together. Here's the twist. The Egyptians didn't just use these scents to feel good. They used them to become gods. Literally. Some rites involved perfuming the priest's body with the same recipes described in the myths for preparing statues of deities. Imagine a human being anointed like a sculpture, then stepping into the role of the divine. Through scent, through oil, through transformation. And it worked. Or at least they believed it worked. And belief is its own kind of chemistry. Of course, not everyone agrees. Modern historians argue over what these perfumes actually did. Were they psychosomatic? Was the trance state purely from suggestion? But fringe researchers, and let's face it, they're the fun ones, claim that certain Egyptian perfumes contained compounds we now associate with mood alteration. Terpenes, essential oils with no neural effects, even low-grade opiates or stimulants in resin form. In the right context, with the right body chemistry, you're not just wearing perfume, you're ingesting atmosphere, and that's exactly what's happening to you now. The priest places a final dab of oil behind your ears, and the perfumer whispers, "You are scented as Ra." You feel it, not as arrogance, but as light. Like the sun has unfurled behind your ribs, you stand swaying a little, eyes half-lidded. The room around you seems clearer than before, edges sharper, shadows deeper. The scent clings to your hair, your palms, your breath. Every move you make leaves a trail of something sacred behind. You walk out of the chamber glowing. You're not sure if anyone else sees it, but you feel it. The fragrance follows, and far ahead, down a corridor warmed by firelight, you hear a familiar sound. Flutes, laughter, the soft splash of water. The gods are animals tonight, and they've come to play. The scent of your transformation still clings to your skin as you step into a wide, torchlit corridor. You expect silence or ritual murmurings, maybe another swirl of incense or song. But what greets you is something far less reverent, and far more alive. You hear snorting, rustling, scratching claws, padded footsteps, feathers flapping in rhythm. You pause, just long enough for a small monkey, yes, a monkey, to bolt across your path and leap onto a stone ledge, chattering gleefully before vanishing behind a painted column. Welcome to the animal temple. You follow the sound of water trickling, laughter echoing off high ceilings, and the unmistakable presence of creatures not confined to pens, not caged, but invited. The corridor widens into a courtyard filled with shallow pools and carved stone troughs, lined with gold and lapis tiles that shimmer under torchlight. In the water, ibises pick delicately at floating herbs. Cats slink across the warm stones, tails held high, eyes glowing like liquid gold. In one corner, a sacred bull, colossal, black, eyes rimmed with kohl, snorts as a priest cools its hide with perfumed water. The air smells different here, less of incense, more of fur and sun-baked clay, damp stone, and something peppery, perhaps the crushed herbs scattered across the walkway. This is not a petting zoo. This is ritual ecology. The animals aren't guests, they're participants. In some cases, even gods. You approach the edge of one of the pools, crouch beside an ibis as it dips its curved beak into the water. It looks at you, unblinking, and in that moment, you swear it knows something. Not instinctually, intellectually. You remember then, the ibis is sacred to Thoth, the scribe god of wisdom, language, and the moon. That explains the silence. This courtyard may feel chaotic, but it's not random. It's a living shrine. Each creature is here for a reason. A priestess in linen approaches with a shallow bowl filled with small black seeds. She gestures for you to follow her along a colonnade toward a raised platform where statues loom. Falcon-headed Horus, lion-headed Sekhmet, the crocodile-faced Sobek, each one flanked by the living creatures they represent. You pass near a resting lioness, just a statue, thankfully, but behind her a real cat prowls. Same posture, same expression, same regal indifference. You're handed a thin reed torch and guided to a circle marked on the floor with ochre pigment. Other visitors, maybe initiates like you, form a ring. In the centre, a young man kneels beside a cage. The priestess reaches in and removes a small coiled serpent, vivid green and gold, eyes alert, tongue flicking the air. A murmur ripples through the circle. Snakes were feared, yes, but also revered. Symbols of healing and resurrection. That Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, that's not just a cool tattoo, it's a spiritual thesis. Life, death, and rebirth in a single writhing loop. The priestess begins to chant, her voice high and measured. The man lifts the snake with both hands and holds it to the sky, turning slowly. The creature coils around his wrist, not resisting, just being. Around the ring, the animals react subtly. The cat sits up straighter, the ibis flaps once, even the bull stirs, and you feel something rise in your chest, like a memory you've never had but desperately needed. A flicker of recognition. You're not hallucinating, not exactly, but your senses are stretched. There's a theory, on the fringes of course, that Egyptian priests used animals in ritual mirroring, believing that animals perceive things humans couldn't. Magnetic shifts, subtle vibrations, perhaps even divine presence. Some believe rituals were designed not for humans to witness gods, but for animals to sense and reflect the gods through their behaviour. When the falcon turned its head mid-chant, that wasn't random, that was confirmation. You glance toward the statue of Horus. A falcon perches atop its head, not carved but real, watching, waiting. Then it shrieks, once, sharp and clear. The circle gasps. The priestess smiles. The snake has returned to the cage. The seeds are scattered. The animals move again. The ritual's beat dissolving into soft chaos. The courtyard returns to its easy, unpredictable rhythm. A cat brushes against your leg. You look down, expecting it to move on, but it stops, arches, and sits beside you, like it's chosen you. A priest appears at your side. He speaks in a low voice. This one is a messenger. For who? You ask. For Bastet, he replies, then walks away as if that explained anything. You remember Bastet, cat goddess of protection, home, and sometimes wild joy. She was worshipped with perfumes and music, and her temples overflowed with sacred cats. Thousands of them, some mummified, some roaming the grounds like royalty. There's a theory, again, not mainstream, that these cats were trained to sense sacred energy, or even carry messages between realms. And while modern Egyptologists roll their eyes at that, you have to admit, the stare from this particular cat feels a lot more intentional than it should. You sit beside it, it purrs, you close your eyes, and for a few seconds the courtyard fades. You're on a boat sailing down a nighttime Nile, the stars mirrored perfectly in the water. The animals are there with you, not as passengers, but as guardians. The crocodile swims ahead, the falcon flies above, the cat curls at your feet and you feel safe, whole. When you open your eyes, you're back. The cat is gone. But in your hand is a single black whisker. No explanation, no priest, no spell, just a trace. And the sudden knowledge that your senses are no longer just yours. They're wider now, deeper, sharpened by creatures who walk both realms. You rise. The courtyard fades behind you, and as you turn the corner, the air changes again. It's getting hot, furnace hot, and there's music again. Faster this time. Urgent. Frenzied. Because now comes the blood. The corridor narrows again, but this time the air isn't cool and perfumed. It's stifling. Heat radiates from the walls like breath from a beast's mouth, and each step draws you deeper into a furnace-scented haze. You're sweating immediately, your skin tacky with the remains of oils, incense, and sacred resins from earlier rites. But none of that prepares you for what's coming, because this heat isn't just fire, it's frenzy. It vibrates under your skin, hums between your ribs, and curls around your temples like a hand pushing you forward into something primal. You round a final bend and enter a chamber carved entirely from red sandstone. The walls are rough and scorched, as though licked by flame, and the light comes not from torches but from braziers sunk into the floor, their coals glowing with hypnotic intensity. In the centre of the room, a circle of women dance, not with grace, but with aggression. Their hair whips in wild arcs, their feet strike the ground in chaotic rhythm, and their hands slap their own bodies in time with drums that boom like heartbeats fed through thunder. This is the cult of Sekhmet, and she is not here to soothe. Goddess of war, plague, healing and fire, Sekhmet was the lioness, the eye of Ra when he was angry, the raging flood that devours cities and leaves behind lush green. Her presence wasn't requested, it was survived, and tonight you're going to feel exactly what it means to stand in her heat. A priest covered in ochre dust and charcoal markings approaches you and hands over a shallow cup. You know better than to ask. You drink. It's bitter and thick, gritty at the bottom, and it burns all the way down. There's pomegranate juice in there, maybe date wine, but there's something else too. Something astringent, medicinal and vaguely metallic, maybe even iron. You taste blood. Yours or someone else's. Not clear. Immediately your chest starts to hum. Your skin tightens, the music rises. You've just swallowed a ritual intoxicant, and it wasn't built for comfort. Some Egyptologists believe that in rituals dedicated to Sekhmet, participants ingested powerful infusions, often wine steeped with herbs meant to trigger altered states that mimicked both ecstasy and terror. Ingredients might have included datura, henbane, or even fermented animal blood mixed with sacred wine. A handful of fringe scholars have even proposed that certain rites use symbolic blood drinking, though whether this was literal or achieved through heavy red wine spiked with psychoactives is still up for academic bickering. What's not in dispute is the intensity of these rituals. You watch as one of the dancers suddenly stops mid-movement and lets out a guttural cry that rattles your spine. Her eyes roll back and she drops to her knees, arms wide, chest heaving. Another priest steps in, dabs her forehead with a dark paste, then raises her chin with both hands. He whispers something, words only she hears, and she bursts into laughter. Not joyful, not mocking, just release. Another woman collapses beside her. A third begins spinning so fast her white robes blur into a cyclone of linen and gold. The lioness is here, not in a statue, not in a painting, but in them, and possibly now, in you. Your arms are shaking. Not from fear, but from sheer sensory overload. The music is in your bones, the heat is in your blood, and the urge to move, to do something, anything, is unbearable. You take a step into the circle, The dancers open a space, they don't smile, they don't speak, they just allow. And then you're moving, not with elegance, not with intent. You're just trying to keep your body from exploding. You sway, you stumble, you feel your pulse beat out through your fingertips. One of the dancers smears something onto your forehead, thick and sticky. It smells like cinnamon and rot. You know it's symbolic blood. Or maybe not symbolic. Honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. Everything is ritual, everything is metaphor, and everything is real. You understand now why the Egyptians feared Sekhmet even as they worshipped her. She wasn't a gentle healer. She was fire that burns away sickness. She healed through confrontation with yourself. And if that meant madness, vomiting, screaming, crying in a puddle of your own transformation, then so be it. This wasn't a temple for nice prayers. This was war disguised as purification. There's a story, almost never told outside the margins of scholarly texts, that after the festival of drunkenness, some priests of Sekhmet would select initiates to undergo a deeper trial. Not just celebratory wine and wild dance, but full sensory immersion, fasting, fire exposure, chanting for days, and the ingestion of psychoactive brews designed to unmoor the ego entirely. Survivors, because yes, that's how the text put it, were considered truly blessed. Because to know Sekhmet wasn't just to feel her heat, it was to survive it. You fall to your knees. You're not dizzy exactly, just open, like your chest has been unbuttoned from the inside and all your fear is just gone. There's nothing left but breath and beat and sweat. The music softens now. The circle slows. The dancers kneel one by one, still swaying. A priest places a cup of water in your hand. You drink. It's sweet, cooled with mint and honey. Your tongue rejoices. Your throat loosens. The heat starts to ebb, not disappear, just fade from wildfire to glowing coal. The priest smears another paste along your jaw. It smells like myrrh and crushed roses. You've been purified, not by stillness, not by incense, but by surviving the fire. You sit in silence for a long time, maybe minutes, maybe hours, and when you finally rise, the world is quieter, not externally, inside you, because the storm has passed. And what remains? Clarity. You leave the chamber, skin hot, heart calm, and in the distance, rising from the belly of the temple, you hear the sound of chanting. Not words this time, just syllables. Sounds that have no meaning, but every power. It's time to speak the spell. The path forward narrows again, but this time you don't feel like you're descending or entering something. More like you're being pulled in. The rhythm that lured you from Sekhmet's chamber still hums at the edges of your hearing, but now it's different. No drums, no flutes, just a voice. A single voice chanting one syllable over and over again, so slowly, so precisely. It feels like the air is rearranging itself around each sound. You can't make out the language, but it isn't gibberish. It's engineered, calculated, like it was built not to be understood, but to be felt. You pass through a low doorway and enter a chamber lit only from above, where a shaft of moonlight pours straight down through a square hole in the ceiling. Dust dances in the beam like golden snow. The room is nearly empty. Just a circle marked on the floor in dark pigment and a few figures seated around it, heads bowed, swaying gently. In the centre, a priest chants. You recognise none of the words, and somehow, all of them. This is Heka. Egyptian magic not as illusion, but as vibration. The idea wasn't to pull rabbits from hats or predict love lives, but to manipulate reality itself by naming it correctly. In Egyptian thought, every name held power. Every sound was a tool. And when combined with ritual objects, gestures, and the right timing, a spell could shift the invisible gears of the universe. You're handed a small tablet made of something cool and chalky. Limestone, maybe. A symbol is carved into its surface. You don't recognise it, but the shape feels familiar, like a word you forgot you used to say. A priestess approaches and dips her fingers into a shallow bowl of dark blue ink, then takes your tablet and begins tracing over the lines with delicate precision. When she hands it back to you, the symbol glows, just faintly, in the moonlight. Not supernatural glow, just vibrancy, like it wants to be said out loud. So you do. You open your mouth and repeat the sound the priest is chanting. At first, your voice trembles. The syllable sits awkwardly on your tongue, but you say it again, then again. With each repetition, it feels more natural, more inevitable, like your throat was built for this. The others join in, and suddenly the air around you begins to shimmer. Not visually, not quite, but inside. You feel the architecture of silence rearranging itself. The chant grows, not in volume, but in depth. Each person's voice adds another layer to the frequency. The sound thickens. You feel your ribcage vibrate, your teeth tingle, your mind quiets. You're not thinking, you're vibrating. The Egyptians believed that sound could literally birth creation. In some versions of the creation myth, the world itself was sung into existence. Thoth didn't build the universe, he spoke it. That was the power of Heka. Language didn't describe reality, it created it. A priest approaches and places a strip of cloth in your hands. It's stiff with dried ink and covered in hieroglyphs. As you run your fingers over it, you feel each symbol like a heartbeat. He leans close and whispers, "Breathe into..." It you do. Your breath hits the cloth, and the inked symbols warm. The priest smiles and wraps the cloth gently around your wrist. It's not jewellery. It's a spell. One written, spoken, and now worn. Modern scholars argue over whether Heka was truly considered magic in the same way we use the word. Some say it was closer to science, an early form of neurolinguistics mixed with medicine and ritual. Others suggest it was psychology in action, affirmations wrapped in divine theatre. And then there's the fringe crowd, the ones who insist the Egyptians were practicing something we've only recently started to understand again: sound therapy. The use of vocal frequency to alter states of consciousness, realign the nervous system, even promote healing. Not magic, just forgotten science. Back in the chamber, the chant softens. The priest switches tones. The syllables change shape, folding inward, like your brain is being taught a new grammar by rhythm alone. You follow instinct. Your body begins to sway. You're not dancing. You're vibrating with purpose. Then the silence drops. Total. Not like someone turned off the volume. More like someone absorbed it. Your ears ring with the ghost of sound. You're breathing fast. You didn't even notice when that started. The priest steps forward and places something cold in your hand. A small carved object. You look down. It's a tight knot, the symbol of Isis. Often mistaken for the Ankh, but different. Softer. It represents life, yes, but also protection, especially through words, spells, and maternal power. The priest says simply, "Keep speaking," and leaves. You stay a while longer, chanting softly to yourself, the syllable rolling from your tongue like water over stone. Each repetition is a return, a reinforcement. You're not asking for power, you're becoming it. Eventually you rise and leave the chamber. Outside, the sky has shifted, no longer black, but a deep, pre-dawn blue. The air is cool again, fresh. You run your thumb over the cloth around your wrist. The ink is still warm, and now a new scent. Food, but not breakfast. A banquet. Something is cooking, thick bread, roasted nuts, stewed dates, and underneath it all, that odd, bitter undertone you've come to recognize. Tonight's feast isn't just about eating. It's about feeding the gods. The scent pulls you forward like a thread woven through your ribs. It's warm, sticky sweet, with a depth that tells your stomach to stop playing cool and start rumbling in earnest. You follow the smell past columns etched with feast scenes, gods reclining, servants offering heaps of food, jars brimming with wine so red it looks like molten garnet. These aren't decorative murals, they're menus, invitations, warnings maybe. You enter a long open hall where the floor is polished limestone and everything gleams with a golden tint, like someone dialed the sunrise up to 11. Low tables stretch in every direction, already heavy, with trays of spiced lentils, honey-glazed bread, bowls of figs, dried fish wrapped in grape leaves, and dates so ripe they collapse into themselves like soft sugar. But it's not the food that stops you cold, it's the people, or rather, the state they're in. They're sprawled across cushions, linen tunics askew, eyes glassy, laughter bubbling from half-open mouths. One man is weeping quietly into his wine, 2 women are dancing in place while seated, barely moving their hands, and a priest near the centre is simply humming and swaying, eyes closed, completely unaware of, or perhaps entirely in tune with, his surroundings. Welcome to the Festival of Drunkenness, but not the tidy ceremonial version with polite sips and offerings to the gods. No, this is the messy one, the real one. This is what happens when a state-sanctioned spiritual bender is encouraged once a year, and thousands of people gather outside the Temple of Hathor to lose themselves completely, not for rebellion, not even for fun, though there's plenty of that, but for ritual, for communion through chaos. The ancient Egyptians believed that losing control, truly surrendering to excess, could open doors no sober mind could reach. And tonight, those doors are wide open. You're handed a goblet, terracotta, smooth, warm. The liquid inside is thick and sweet, full-bodied, with a spiced tang that lingers on your tongue. Wine? Yes, but more. You recognise the hint of fermented pomegranate, maybe honey, maybe something darker, rootier. The kind of drink that doesn't ask you if you're ready. It just takes you. You find a spot near a low platform where musicians pluck at harps and beat frame drums in stuttering rhythms that feel just off enough to keep your brain from settling. You sip again. Your muscles soften, your ears perk, and then it happens. The shift. You start to feel porous. Not broken, not fading. Just open. As though your body's edges are dissolving into the room's laughter and sighs and smells. Across from you, a man raises a loaf of bread toward a small statue of Hathor. Her cow ears visible beneath an elaborate headdress. He mutters something into the crust, breaks it, eats half, and hands the rest to the statue. Another woman pours wine into a shallow dish and places it at the feet of a cat slinking between cushions. The cat drinks. Everyone cheers. This isn't a party around the divine, it's a party with the divine. There's a line in a surviving hymn to Hathor that reads, "Lady of jubilation, who dances in joy, she who embraces drunkenness, she who awakens with the dawn." That last part is key, because the ancient Egyptians weren't stupid. They knew that what goes up must come down. That ecstasy has a price. But that's part of the point. The morning after was part of the ritual. After the frenzy, the release, the weeping and shouting and tangled limbs, came the dawn, the cool, quiet clarity. And only those who had truly let go would be ready to receive it. You drink again. You feel your breath slow. Around you, the scene blurs. Not visually, not like a trip, but emotionally. The joy turns sticky. Someone's crying again. Someone else is curled in a ball, smiling like they've just made peace with a ghost. A priest leans over to you and whispers, "When the world was young, Hathor was rage. She drank until she forgot how to kill." This is how we remind her, how we remind ourselves. You think of the earlier rites, the sweat of Sekhmet, the perfumed ecstasy, the chants that opened cracks in your mind. It all leads here, to this moment where nothing is clean, but everything is sacred. The feast continues. You eat without realizing what, only that your mouth is full of warm, savory bliss, then cold, sticky fruit, then sweet bread melting between your teeth. The sensations pile up. Your fingers are sticky. You don't care. And then the lights shift. Not torches. Sky. You realize the sun has begun to rise, and the tone of the room changes. It's subtle. One musician stops playing, then another. People begin to lie back, stretch, breathe slower. The mood softens from frenzy to hush. Even the wine tastes different, mellower, thinner, like the night is retreating from your mouth. The priests begin moving among the guests, sprinkling cool water over their hands, anointing foreheads with oil that smells like mint and myrrh. You receive yours without question. It's not a closing, it's a blessing. You're hungover from spirit. The priest who gave you the cup returns and places a small strip of papyrus beside your hand. On it, a single glyph. An eye. The eye of Re, but weeping. It's a reminder. A reflection. Joy. Rage. Release, rebirth. The whole cycle contained in one symbol. You pocket it. The feast fades, the room clears. You rise, stomach full, eyes soft, skin marked with salt and oil and something that smells faintly of memory. There's nowhere to go but forward, and forward leads out of the temple and under open sky. Because next the stars speak, and you're going to listen. The cool air hits your face like an unexpected kindness as you step out of the temple and into the vast courtyard beyond. The sun has only just broken the horizon, but the light feels old, as if it's rising from memory rather than sky. The courtyard is empty of revellers now, except for a few figures walking silently in the distance, their linen robes rippling in the early breeze like soft sails. The drunken festival has ended, but you haven't come down, not completely. You're floating, light-headed, not from wine anymore, but from something more elusive. Or, maybe, a residue of the divine. Ahead of you, a staircase rises gently toward a terrace built above the temple's outer wall. It's wide, open, and aligned with mathematical precision. You feel it before you even reach it. The way your body seems to fall into sync with something invisible, like stepping into the pulse of a machine built not for men, but for gods and stars. You ascend slowly, your sandals slapping softly against cool stone, and as you reach the top, the view opens up, and your breath catches. The desert stretches out before you, flat and endless, bathed in gold. But that's not what holds your gaze. Overhead, the last stars still cling to the edge of dawn, refusing to fade, and there, on the horizon, 3 great shapes pierce the sky. Pyramids, ancient, patient, and sharp enough to split time. You're not here for the tombs, though. Not this time. You're here for something more cosmic. A priest stands at the edge of the terrace beside a low stone table covered in polished bronze mirrors and palm-sized discs carved with stars, planets, and strange concentric circles. He looks at you, nods once, and gestures to sit. The table isn't a table, not really. It's an astronomical instrument, and you're about to use it the way the ancient Egyptian star priests did, by listening, not just observing. Egyptian astronomy wasn't about naming constellations for fun or predicting eclipses to impress kings. It was about alignment, spiritual, agricultural, temporal. The stars weren't distant dots of burning gas. They were beings, messengers, divine timers that told you when to plant crops, when to begin rituals, when to prepare the body for rebirth. The sky was a scroll, and the priests, they were its translators. The priest beside you picks up a disc and holds it to the rising sun, letting the light beam through a small hole in the centre. The beam lands on a notch in the stone table, and just like that, the season is known. The Nile will flood soon. The rituals of Osiris must begin. You watch this happen with no fanfare, no magic words, just light, stone, and an understanding older than language. You close your eyes and listen. Nothing. Then, faintly, a hum. Not from outside, from above, or within. You can't tell, but you feel it. The stars are still speaking, whispering in tones beyond speech. You wonder if this is what the priests of Heliopolis felt as they gazed skyward from their observatories, or the builders who aligned the pyramids so precisely that even modern surveyors flinch with envy. Maybe they weren't just mathematicians. Maybe they were psychonauts in linen robes, charting not just the stars but the space between them. There's a scholarly debate, of course there is, about whether the Egyptians used psychoactives during their stargazing rituals. Some argue that the precision of their celestial calendars needed no chemical assistance. Others, more open-minded, or maybe just less cautious, suggest that low doses of blue lotus or fermented myrrh wine may have been used to induce a trance state where patterns became clearer, distractions fell away, and the soul could, however briefly, rise like a kite tethered to the moon. You lean back, the sandstone cool against your spine, and stare up at the fading constellations. Orion is still there, belt-angled perfectly with the temples below. In Egypt, that's Osiris, the god of death and rebirth, striding across the sky. Beside him, Sirius, the dog star known as Sopdet, blinks like a message in Morse code. Her rising marked the start of the flood, of the new year, of everything, and now she's fading. The sun has almost caught her. A priest beside you begins to hum, not loud, just enough to feel like a vibration in your chest. You join, unsure why, but trusting the instinct. You hum together, tuning your breath to the pulse of the sky. And something shifts. Your mind stops feeling like a container. It becomes a window. You see not just stars, but pathways, as if the sky's a map printed in silver ink. And now, at this strange edge of dawn, you can see the roads beneath it. One leads upward, one leads backward, one leads home, though you're not sure where that is anymore. The priest stops humming and places something cool in your hand. You open your eyes. It's a tiny piece of lapis lazuli carved into the shape of a 5-pointed star. The colour is deep, almost alive. You recognise it from tombs, from pendants, from headdresses. It's the star of rebirth. You've been seen, the priest says simply. Now you must dream. The sky brightens, the stars vanish, and with them, the clarity. You stand. Your mind is full of questions, but your body is full of answers. You don't need to chase anything, not yet. You descend the stairs slowly, feet lighter than stone should allow. Because now it's time to lie down, to sleep not as rest, but as ritual. The dream temples await, and they've already started calling your name. By now you've grown used to the idea that nothing in this temple is just what it seems. A cup isn't just a cup, a dance isn't just a dance, and sleep, especially sleep, isn't just rest. So when you descend from the star terrace and find yourself standing before a wide-arched doorway framed in pale green stone, the kind that shimmers faintly in shadow, you already know. You're not going to bed. You're going somewhere else entirely. The priest at the threshold says only one word. Enter. You do. And just like that, the air changes. Cooler, heavier, scented with chamomile, crushed mint and something earthy. Wet bark, perhaps. The corridor curves inward like a spiral shell, lit by low oil lamps suspended from bronze serpents. You walk quietly, your footsteps muffled by thick woven mats. The walls are painted with vines, stars and eyes. Lots of eyes. Watching? Yes, but not in a threatening way. Like they're keeping your soul from wandering too far. Like they've done this before. You enter the chamber and stop short. It's not lavish. There's no bed, no pillows, no gold. Just a single slab of polished stone worn smooth at the edges from centuries of bodies lying there. Above it, a skylight opens to the sky. Nothing but blue and white now, maybe a single hawk, circling far above. Around the room, vessels of water trickle down narrow channels, creating a soft, constant gurgle like distant rain. Everything here is designed to blur the lines between consciousness and something else. You're in a sleep temple, or what the Greeks later called a dream incubation chamber, but the Egyptians did it first. The priest gestures for you to lie down. You do, back resting against the cool stone, arms at your sides, breathing steady. You're given no blanket, no potion, no explanation, just silence. The priest traces a symbol, an ankh, on your forehead with a finger dipped in oil. Then he leaves. The door closes, and the dream begins. Not immediately. It's slow, creeping in from the edges. At first, you just feel very present, every inch of your body catalogued in your awareness. The tickle behind your knee, the weight of your arms, the beat of your heart slowing to match the rhythm of the dripping water. Then your breath deepens and the light from above seems to shift, not because the sun moved, but because you did. Your eyes are closed, but you see clearly. A river. Not the Nile, but something like it. Wider, blacker, flowing through stars instead of sand. You're on a boat, made of gold, with oars that row themselves, and you're not alone. Beside you sits a woman with a throne for a crown. Isis, maybe. She doesn't speak. She just hums. You know this melody. You've heard it in the chanting, the incense, the heartbeat of the temple. She reaches out and touches your chest. You wake, but you're still dreaming. Now you're in a field of reeds, walking barefoot. The wind brushes your face like silk, and you hear laughter, yours but younger. You turn. A child version of yourself runs ahead, chasing a cat that glows faintly under the moonlight. You follow, but the path changes under your feet, turning to steps, then water, then air, then silence. You wake again. But no, still dreaming. This time you're back in the temple, but it's flooded. Water laps at the columns. Blue lotus blooms float lazily across the surface. Figures move through the water, priests, gods, animals, all merging into one another. A crocodile with a human face, a woman with wings of perfume smoke, a cat playing a sistrum. And then you hear it. Your name. Whispered, not spoken. Not the name you use now, the one you forgot. It vibrates through your bones. You open your mouth to speak it, but wake up truly this time. The sunbeam above has shifted. It cuts across the room now, warming your chest. You're not disoriented. You're calm. Like someone told you a secret you haven't fully remembered yet, but you will. You sit up slowly. The chamber is still empty. No priest returns. You find a small object beside you, a scrap of linen rolled and tied with a single thread of gold. You unwrap it. Inside is a dried blue lotus petal, and a line of hieroglyphs you somehow understand. The answer is within the question. You smile. Sleep temples weren't just about rest. They were diagnostic tools, places where people came to heal through vision. Dreaming wasn't passive, it was active. Priests were dream interpreters, yes, but also facilitators. They used herbs, sound, smoke, and story to guide your mind to where the body couldn't go. It wasn't fantasy, it was therapy. Some scholars believe mandrake and blue lotus were used to enhance these experiences, dream boosters, if you will. Others suggest fasting and sleep deprivation alone could trigger these lucid states. There's no hard consensus. But the rooms themselves still exist, buried deep in old temple complexes like Dendera and Deir el-Medina, complete with skylights and carved prayers. You stand, petal still in hand, and step back into the hall. The scent of mint has faded. The hush remains. Your feet carry you forward without instruction. You are rested, but you're not finished. Because somewhere up ahead, the final preparations are being made. Paint, stone, gold. It's time to put on your face. The corridor ahead is narrow and glowing with a strange light. Not torchlight, not moonlight, but something softer, hazier. You can't tell if it's the stone itself or something clinging to the air, but it feels like walking into a dream that forgot it was asleep. The walls are covered in etched profiles, rows of faces, all lined with thick, exaggerated eyes, long noses and painted lips. They stare out calmly, each one framed with headdresses, wigs, or elaborate crowns, like the hallway is lined with mirrors that only show the sacred version of you. And maybe that's exactly what this is, because now you're entering the chamber of cosmetic transformation, though that word cosmetic doesn't even begin to cut it. Here, makeup isn't just about beauty, it's about magic, protection, identity. You're about to paint your face not to hide, but to reveal. The chamber itself opens wide and tall, with a ceiling painted like the sky. Deep blue with golden stars arranged in constellations that you recognize now, thanks to the stargazers. Along the walls, shelves are stacked with tiny vessels, alabaster, lapis, obsidian. Each one is labelled with glyphs. Some carry scents, frankincense oil, myrrh paste, blue lotus salve. Others hold pigment, malachite for green, galena for black, red ochre for lips and cheeks. There are brushes made from date palm fibres, fine ivory spatulas, even small bronze tools shaped like birds or ankhs. Two priestesses enter, wearing long linen robes and jewellery that jingles just slightly with every step. They wash your face with warm water steeped in mint and something sharper, perhaps vinegar or lemon. It tingles. Your skin wakes up. One of them gently scrapes away dead skin with a curved copper blade. The other dries your face with a strip of linen that smells faintly of neroli and crushed almonds. Then the painting begins. First, your eyes. A thick line of black kohl is, traced from the inner corner of your eyes to well beyond the edge, curling up like a falcon's wing. You know the look. It's everywhere in Egyptian art, but on your face, it feels like armour, a shield drawn in shadow. It cools as it sets, made from galena, a lead-based mineral ground and mixed with fat or oil. You've heard people call it dangerous, but here, it's sacred, protective, designed not only to reduce glare from the sun, but to repel infection. The Egyptians wore it not just as style, but as spiritual sunscreen. Then comes green. Malachite powder is dabbed above the lids. It's iridescent, bright, like polished stone come to life. You glance into a bronze mirror and flinch, not because of what you see, but because of how different you feel looking back. Like your face has become a symbol, not a self. Your lips are painted with a red ochre paste made from crushed iron oxide and pomegranate. It stains more than it coats, giving your mouth a flushed, heat-kissed look that somehow makes your words feel weightier, more deliberate. Your skin is rubbed with scented oil and dusted with ground rose petals. Your hands and arms are marked with gold leaf designs. Temporary, yes, but they shimmer with every twitch of muscle like your body is made of language. You are not being decorated, you are being declared. There's a theory, again not totally accepted in mainstream academia, that makeup in Egypt had psychoactive properties. Some researchers believe certain oils and pigments contain trace amounts of compounds that affected mood, cognition, even perception. Galena and malachite, for instance, both contain heavy metals that, when absorbed through skin in low doses, might have altered awareness, especially over time. Combine that with perfumes steeped in blue lotus or mandrake, and you've got a ritual cosmetic cocktail. But even without the chemicals, the ritual works. You feel elevated, not in the beauty influencer sense, in the my body is now a shrine sense. Because in Egypt, appearance wasn't vanity, it was intent. The gods were painted, the dead were painted. To leave your body unmarked was to leave it unfinished. You weren't hiding flaws, you were calling on divine power. Every line of coal was a prayer, every smear of pigment was a spell, and every time someone looked at you, they weren't seeing you, they were seeing your role, your purpose, your function in the cosmic equation, and in this moment your role is clear. You are the vessel. The priestesses bow, then step back, silently assessing their work. One of them places a wide gold collar around your neck, inlaid with turquoise and carnelian. It's heavy, but good heavy, weight that means something. They hand you a mirror. This time, when you look into it, you don't flinch. You see someone else, not a stranger, not an actor. A version of you that's always been waiting underneath. The mirror ripples slightly, not literally, but in your mind, and you see flashes. Desert wind, river water, black soil, firelight, elements. The pieces of you, the parts that matter. Then the mirror is taken away. You're led out of the chamber. You're not told where you're going next, but you know, because the transformation isn't finished. There's one final step. You've scented your body, painted your face, travelled through dream and chant and star, but now it's time to be washed clean, not to remove anything, but to prepare for the ultimate immersion. The Nile is waiting, and tonight, it's not a river, it's a mind. The corridor descends with a subtle slope, as if leading you down the spine of the earth itself. The air grows dense, not in a suffocating way, but with an almost velvet thickness, like every breath carries the weight of 100 centuries. The walls here are damp, cool to the touch, and lined with scenes of boats drifting over gentle waves, priests pouring libations, and blue lotus flowers unfurling across the surface of water like ancient eyes slowly opening. It's clear now. This is not a hallway. This is a threshold. You hear it before you see it. The rhythmic lap of water echoing off stone. The occasional splash that sounds too deliberate to be random. The scent of the Nile reaches you next, not the muddy, sun-baked odour of the riverside banks, but something subtler, purer. Water infused with flowers, with herbs, with memory. Then the path opens wide. You step into a chamber that looks nothing like a room and everything like a dream. A vast underground pool stretches out before you, black as obsidian, the surface smooth and undisturbed except where petals drift lazily in lazy spirals. Along the water's edge, low steps curve down into the basin, worn smooth by generations of bare feet. Above, a circular opening lets moonlight pour straight down, illuminating only a slice of the pool with silver light. The rest remains in cool shadow, as if waiting for your decision. This isn't just water. This is the sacred Nile, distilled. You realise now you're not in the actual river, of course. This is an artificial spring built beneath the temple, hidden from the sun, kept pure and untouched. The water was likely drawn from the Nile at its cleanest point, then filtered, prayed over, and infused with oils and petals. It's not just for cleansing the body, it's for immersing the mind. A priest silently gestures for you to disrobe. You hesitate, then comply. No shame here, nothing taboo. The body's not scandalous in this place. It's a tool, a channel, a canvas. You step into the water, it's cold. Not painfully so, but enough to remind you that you are skin and bone and breath. The temperature shocks the air from your lungs, then replaces it with stillness. You sink to your waist, then deeper, until only your head remains above. The water clings to your skin like silk soaked in night. Around the pool, acolytes chant. Not loudly, not in performance, but like lullabies, spoken just above silence. The words melt together into rhythm, a spell designed not to summon but to dissolve. You feel it happening. The identity you've been carrying all night, painted face, oiled skin, gold collar, slips away under the surface. Not lost, just momentarily. Irrelevant. You float on your back. The ceiling disappears. The moon above looks closer than it should. You close your eyes, and then it begins. The Nile wasn't just a river to the Egyptians. It was a god, a portal, and a womb all at once. It carried life through its floods and death in its depths. Its waters fed the fields and nourished the dead. Baptisms here weren't about washing sin. They were about awakening truth. The part of you that the desert parched, the part the temple called back to the surface. There's a fringe theory that the sacred water used in Egyptian rites may have been subtly psychoactive, not because of chemical additives, but because of what the water carried. Trace minerals, algae, even fermented plant matter gathered along the Nile's long body. Some suggest it was infused intentionally, with blue lotus, papyrus root, even small amounts of datura, to invoke that slight drift of consciousness. Enough to relax the mind, to drop defences, to let visions rise like steam. You don't know what's in this water, but you know what it's doing. Your thoughts loosen, not in panic, in peace. You feel yourself expand, no longer confined to body. Your river stone petal, a voice whispers, not aloud, not external, just inside your ribs. You're both vessel and current. You don't understand it fully, you don't need to. You let go, not in surrender, in participation, you dive. The water rushes over your scalp, into your ears, behind your eyes. You see colours, hear names, taste fire, feel the weight of a hawk's wings pulling you upward. When you rise again, gasping softly, the pool is quieter. Or maybe it's you who has changed. The priest stands nearby with a woven linen robe. You step from the water and wrap it around you. You don't dry off. You don't need to. You carry the Nile now, inside. You're guided from the pool through a short passage where burning torches hiss against the cool air. The scent of cedar and juniper fills the space. You're not led back into the temple halls you've known. You're led to a narrow stairway carved into stone that feels older than everything else. Older than the temple, older than the Nile, stone that remembers before. The priest speaks for the first time. Are you ready to see? You nod. Though for what? You aren't sure. You're still dripping, still dreaming, still ringing with the hum of the water's voice. But you climb. Because whatever comes next, you're no longer only yourself. You are river-fed, star-washed. And the gods are waiting at the gate. The stairs rise with an unsettling silence. No creak of wood, no drip of water, just the bare slap of your feet against ancient stone as you ascend. Heartbeat steady, breath slow. The robe clings to your damp skin, catching the cool air that rises from the sacred pool behind you. It's a feeling that would have made you shiver once. But not now. Now, you're used to transformation. Your body's no longer just yours. It's part temple, part river, part vessel for something still unfolding. The passage is narrow and steep, lit by a line of oil lamps shaped like lion heads, their mouths wide, flames flickering like the breath of sleeping beasts. You're climbing toward heat again. You can feel it building ahead, dry, intense, and deliberate. This isn't the chaos of Sekhmet's fire room. This is something else, something with structure, ceremony, blood maybe. You emerge into a chamber that feels older than the rest. Not in architecture. It's beautifully carved, smooth and symmetrical, but in presence, like you've stepped into a heartbeat that's been pulsing longer than your entire civilization. A long altar stretches across the room, flanked by two braziers spitting tongues of fire. Red and gold tapestries hang from the ceiling in rippling waves, embroidered with lions, solar discs and thick looping symbols that seem to dance when you look too long. At the centre stands a statue of Sekhmet, but unlike the frenzied, dancing lioness of your earlier encounter, this version is still, regal, watching. Her eyes are obsidian, her body gold, and in one hand she holds a sceptre shaped like a papyrus stalk. In the other, a knife. You're not here to witness chaos, you're here to submit to it. A circle of priests and priestesses, all cloaked in black linen with red sashes tied tightly around their waists, begin to chant. It's not melodic. It's low, guttural and rhythmic, more like breath than language. Their heads are shaved, their faces painted with streaks of red ochre. Each of them holds a clay bowl filled with a thick, dark liquid. You already know what it is, even before you smell the copper: blood. Whether animal or symbolic, it doesn't matter. You're past the point where metaphor and matter are separate. In this space, they are one. You kneel on the centre stone slab, warmed by the fire, still faintly damp from the Nile immersion. One priest steps forward and presses a thumb to your forehead, marking it with a single streak of blood. Another paints your chest in the shape of a lion's paw. A third offers you a small sharp knife with a carved bone handle. You take it. You don't ask what for. It isn't for cutting others. It's for offering yourself. You press the tip to your palm and draw a thin, shallow line. Not enough to hurt, just enough to open. The blood wells quickly, warm and honest. A priest catches the drop in his bowl and stirs it in with the rest. Then they smear it back onto you. You are part of the ritual now, not just as a witness, but as ingredient. This is the ritual of rebirth by blood, one of Sekhmet's most sacred rites. Rarely spoken of outside closed temple circles, it represents both destruction and healing. The lioness devours, yes, but only so the new can rise. There's an old inscription from the Temple of Mut that reads, "She who burns illness with her gaze, she who cuts falsehood with her claws. This is her domain." Some Egyptologists think this rite was symbolic, a kind of moral reckoning dramatized through red wine and theatre. Others believe small animal sacrifices were made, the blood used in controlled purification ceremonies. And then there are those fringe voices, the ones who speak quietly in academic corners, who suggest that certain initiates may have undergone actual bloodletting as part of a trance induction, a physical offering designed to thin the veil and invite the divine within. Not painful, just intentional. You lie back now. The fire crackles louder. The chant quickens. One priestess raises a bowl of smouldering herbs. Myrrh, acacia, cedar, and something else. Something sweet and sharp, like star anise soaked in vinegar. She fans the smoke toward your face. You inhale. It scorches your lungs in the best possible way. Your head buzzes. The chanting deepens. Another priest steps forward and lifts a narrow object wrapped in linen. He unwinds it slowly, revealing a lion's tooth, polished and strung on a gold chain. He places it around your neck. "You are devoured," he says, "and reborn," says another. And then the room explodes. Not in sound, not in movement, in vision. You're no longer lying on stone. You're inside fire, not burning, becoming. You see yourself as a lion, fur bristling, eyes bright, body tense with instinct and power. You prowl through a dream world, hunting, not prey, but weakness, illness, lies. All that is false within you cowers in a corner and you roar. Not from rage, from truth. When you return to your body, your hands are clenched. Your chest is heaving. The fire's heat is real again, but you are not scorched. You are steady. The blood has dried on your skin. The lion's tooth sits cool at your throat. A priest offers you water. You drink, and feel it run down your chest like baptism. The chanting ends. Sekhmet watches, expression unchanged. But you know, she saw, she judged, she spared. You rise from the slab. No one claps. No one bows. They simply let you go. Because now you are no longer the one being prepared. You are the one who prepares others. Your blood has joined the current. And as you descend the staircase again, you hear one final whisper in the stone. Speak, and it shall become. Because next comes the power that started it all. Not blood, not incense, not stars, but words. The descent feels different this time. You're not just walking down stone steps. You're carrying something. Not physically, but within your breath, your skin, your newly anointed bones. You've been painted, sung into trance, wrapped in sleep, drowned and dried, burned and bled, and yet somehow you feel lighter, cleaner, like a single note, perfectly tuned. The air ahead shifts again, cooler now, whispering across your neck in threads that almost resemble voices. You're not imagining it. The walls are speaking, or rather, the words that live in them are. You follow the murmurs until you reach the next chamber. Spacious, low-ceilinged and glowing from 100 carved alcoves in the walls, each holding a flickering oil lamp. Between them are rows and rows of hieroglyphs. Deep, sharp, clean, as if they were etched into stone not thousands of years ago, but yesterday. You can't help but stop and trace one with your fingertip. The moment your skin makes contact, your breath hitches. It's like touching a live wire. The symbol doesn't just sit there passively. It vibrates. You feel it in your jaw, your rib cage, even in your teeth. This is Heka. Again. But this time, it's not being chanted, not being painted or worn. It's being activated, and you are the activator. A priest appears, silent as a shadow, and hands you a strip of papyrus, freshly inked. On it is a series of glyphs that look oddly familiar, though you've never studied them. You don't need to ask what they mean. Somehow you know, not the translation, but the effect. This is a spoken spell, a real one, a phrase designed not just to communicate, but to change something. You must speak it, the priest says, but only when you mean it. That's the catch. In Egyptian magic, the power of a word didn't come from volume or drama or theatre. It came from intention, from alignment. Words were living things, spirits even, and if you spoke them wrong, without respect, without resonance, they might turn against you, or worse, do nothing at all. You look at the symbols again. Your mouth forms them silently. Your tongue prepares. The priest leads you to the centre of the chamber, where a low altar sits carved with patterns that spiral inward, each one drawing your gaze deeper until it feels like your vision is collapsing into itself. Around the altar are objects, carved figurines, crystal bowls, bird feathers, gold rings, and lengths of copper wire coiled like sleeping snakes. "This is your language now," the priest whispers. "Your voice is the instrument." You kneel. The room darkens slightly as lamps are extinguished one by one, until only the single flame above the altar remains. It flickers as you breathe, then steadies, then flickers again. It's waiting, so you speak. The first syllable cracks through the stillness like a bell rung from the bottom of a canyon. Not loud, not piercing, but clear, true. The symbols rise off the papyrus, not literally but functionally, each one activating a note in your chest, a ripple in the room's energy. You speak the next line, and your voice doesn't feel like yours anymore. It's deeper, slower, almost mechanical, like the words are speaking you. By the third line, something shifts. Not around you, inside you. You feel a pressure behind your eyes, then in your throat, then in your sternum, as if something is cracking open, like a geode splitting to reveal crystal. You inhale sharply. Your lips form the final line, and the flame above the altar bends toward you, just slightly, just enough to say, yes. The spell is cast. You sit in the silence afterward, shaking slightly, not from fear, but from intensity. You don't know what you just did, but you know it's real. Egyptian Heka wasn't just for healing or calling on gods. It was used for everything. Love, protection, curses, fertility, clarity, transformation. There were words for each layer of human experience, and combinations of those words to reshape it all. Some spells were carried on amulets, others written on tomb walls, others still spoken once and never again. The line between religion and magic didn't exist here. Heka was the glue that held both together. Modern scholars argue over how much of it was symbolic versus practical. Some believe the magic was purely psychological, rituals to frame the mind, calm the nerves, structure the chaos. But others, fringe linguists, even sound engineers, have pointed out that Egyptian spells weren't just written to be read. They were constructed for vocal frequency, matching breath and body rhythm to tonal vibration. In other words, they weren't just casting spells, they were tuning reality. You look down at the papyrus strip. The ink is dry now, cold. You roll it and tuck it into the sash at your waist. The priest returns with a long strip of linen and wraps it gently around your neck. A blessing, a seal, a reminder not of silence but of speech done wisely. He bows. So do you. And now you rise. And the temple, impossibly, grows quiet again. Because this isn't the end, it's the edge. You've spoken the words, cast the spell, but the final voyage still lies ahead, and you'll need more than speech for that. You'll need to follow the dead and see what they saw. There's no ceremony to mark your passage now, no music, no perfumed air, just a long, straight hallway that grows darker with every step, lined with statues whose faces blur into shadow. You pass beneath them like a whisper, barely disturbing the dust, until the walls tighten and the ceiling drops low. Then, with a sudden finality that feels less like arrival and more like surrender, you find yourself standing before a tall door of ebony wood, carved not with gods or glyphs, but with stars. Countless tiny stars arranged in spirals and waves and constellations you don't recognize. The door opens silently and you step into the tomb. Not a tomb in the sense of coffins and skeletons. A ritual tomb. A chamber crafted not for the dead to stay in but to pass through. A place where the body might lie still but the soul gets moving. You feel it immediately. The pressure, the cold, the thick silence that wraps around you like a lead blanket. You are no longer walking through the temple. You're walking through Duat, the Egyptian underworld. The chamber is vast and domed, with walls painted in electric colours that have somehow survived millennia without fading. A giant serpent coils along the ceiling, its body forming a cosmic loop with the sun god Ra sailing across its back. Below, scenes unfold in bands like a cosmic comic strip. The weighing of the heart, the devourer Amit waiting hungrily, the gods seated in judgment, Anubis guiding the dead by the hand through rivers of fire, caverns of knives, and fields of tall blue wheat. This isn't art, it's a map, and you're about to follow it. A priest, quiet, masked, robed in black, gestures for you to lie down on the slab in the centre of the room. It's cold, unsurprisingly, but something about it feels different. Familiar, like you've lain here before, maybe in another life, maybe in every one. He places an amulet on your chest, a scarab carved from obsidian, wings outstretched. Then he takes a small bowl of dark liquid and dips a reed brush into it. He begins to paint symbols across your forehead, your collarbone, your hands. Each stroke tickles, cool and slightly sticky. You smell honey, myrrh, maybe cannabis? You've heard theories, fringe theories mostly, that some of these funerary preparations included psychoactive compounds used to slow the breath, blur the mind, induce hallucinations meant to simulate the voyage of the soul through Duat. That ancient embalmers were part mortician, part psychonaut guide. You believe it now, because your body is melting into the slab and your mind is leaving. You don't sleep. You fall. Downward, into heat and wind and soundless noise, until you're standing on a boat drifting down a black river lit only by lanterns floating like jellyfish above the water. Beside you stands a jackal-headed figure, tall and silent, holding a torch that doesn't flicker. Anubis. You don't need to speak. He's not here to talk. He's here to escort. The river turns, the stars vanish. Now you're walking through desert. But the sand is made of ash, and your footsteps leave no mark. Shadows move behind you, never quite catching up. You hear voices in languages you never learned but somehow understand. They ask questions. Do you know your name? Do you know your heart? Do you know the truth you've been hiding? You try to answer. You think you do, but your mouth won't move. Then you arrive at the scale. It's exactly as the paintings promised. A massive set of golden scales, with a single feather resting on one side and your heart, pulsing, real, raw, on the other. Thoth watches nearby, stylus ready. Amit waits below, a crocodile-lion-hippo hybrid whose mouth never closes. You don't get to plead your case. Your deeds are already known. The heart balances, just barely. You're allowed to pass. You walk now through the field of reeds, a mirrored paradise of the Nile, only cleaner, brighter, untouched. You see faces you recognize but can't name. Hands reach out and brush your arms with kindness. Someone presses a cool fig into your palm. You eat it. It tastes like sunlight and memory. Then, abruptly, you're back on the stone slab. The priest is wiping your brow with a warm linen. You're trembling, but not afraid. Not anymore. You sit up. The chamber feels different, not because it's changed, but because you have. You've gone where the dead go, and come back. This rite, this funerary simulation, wasn't just about preparing for death. It was about learning to live with it, to understand its rules, its rhythms, to navigate your own eventual return not with fear, but with clarity. In ancient Egypt, the dead weren't buried and forgotten. They were transformed, empowered, sent off with scrolls of spells, potions, amulets and maps, not just to protect them, but to equip them. Death wasn't a wall. It was a corridor, one that looped, curved, and eventually brought you back. changed. There's debate, of course. Some scholars argue these rites were symbolic, part of a performative mythology with no real mystical substance. Others insist the Egyptians truly believed the soul took this journey and that these rehearsals were critical for spiritual survival. And then there are those who point to the consistency, the fact that these stories, these rituals, remained largely unchanged for thousands of years as proof that something deeper was at play. Something felt. You know what you felt. The scarab still rests against your chest, cool and solid. You rise. The priest says nothing. He doesn't need to. You've gone through, you're still going through. But now there's only one question left. What does it all mean? Because as mind-bending as Egypt was, the plants, the chants, the blood, the dreams, you can't help but wonder, what now? You leave the tomb quietly, as if waking from a dream that left fingerprints on your soul. The hall outside is empty, the walls unadorned, no gods, no glyphs, no stars or serpents. Just smooth, bare stone lit by a shaft of light that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere. It's humbling, after the colour and ritual and sound of everything that came before. But it makes sense. After death, after the voyage, after all the smoke and blood and sacred powders, what's left is this, the blank page, the reset. A silence that doesn't ask but listens. And that silence follows you as you're led, without words, into the final chamber. It's round and open, with no ceiling, just sky. High walls protect it from the wind, but sunlight streams down in a perfect circle, spotlighting a small platform at the centre. Around the edges, cushions, mats, and baskets of fruit and herbs suggest that others have gathered here before. Not many, but enough to leave behind echoes. You step onto the platform, this is it, the end of the journey, and maybe the beginning of something else. A priest you don't recognise approaches. His robe is simple, bone white, and he carries no amulets, no incense, no symbols of authority. Just a bowl of cool water and a piece of bread shaped like a star. You've walked the path, he says, voice calm. You've been consumed, lifted, soaked, painted, stripped, spoken, and judged. So now we ask only one thing. What did you see? You hesitate, because you saw everything, and nothing you can say will be enough. But you speak anyway. You speak of the lotus, of smoky temples and the rhythm of trance, of the echo of your voice in dark stone halls, of chanting words that felt like keys to invisible doors, of eyes painted onto your face until you saw more clearly, of floating in water that whispered truths, of roaring as a lion, of watching your own heart tip on a golden scale. The priest listens without nodding, without questioning, just absorbing. When you finish, he smiles gently and places the bowl in your hands. Then you are ready. You drink. The water tastes like mint and stone and something sweet you can't name. You eat the bread. It's soft and warm and tastes like it was made for you, baked with fig and honey and maybe a pinch of ash. And you know, this is the final rite, to return. Because yes, the Egyptians got high, higher than you'd ever believe, but not just for fun, not just to escape. They did it to climb inward, to become instruments, messengers, living bridges between flesh and spirit. This culture of vivid dreams and smouldering altars understood something modern minds keep trying to reclaim, that altered states aren't always distractions, sometimes they're compasses. And the Egyptians didn't just dabble, they built entire systems to explore these frontiers, with plant allies, with sound, with sex, with sacrifice, with ritual, that blurred the line between science and sorcery. You think back to that first blue lotus, the one you plucked at the beginning, still glowing in your memory like a pulse in the dark. You didn't understand what it meant then. You do now. It wasn't just a flower. It was an invitation, a gateway, a dare, and you took it. Now the priest steps back and lifts his hand, not to dismiss you, but to release you. You may go, he says, but know this, the temple remains. You nod and turn to leave. No ceremony this time, no chanting, no flames, just you. And the soft rhythm of your own footsteps, out through the corridors where the walls no longer whisper, past the altars now silent, back through the same door you entered, now bathed in a full golden light. And when you step outside, it hits you. The world hasn't changed, but you have. You walk through sand that now feels softer, like skin. You smell the Nile and understand that it is not just water, but memory in liquid form. You look at the sky, and don't just see light. You see timing, signs, messages hidden in the movement of stars. You've carried the divine and survived the descent. Now you carry understanding, and even if you never speak it out loud, even if no one else knows what you've seen, you do, and that's enough, because somewhere, deep inside you, the chant still echoes, the paint still clings, the spell still hums, and the gods? They're not above you anymore, they're within. So now you're lying there, head on your pillow, a little heavier behind the eyes than before, body sinking into the mattress like it finally knows it has permission to exhale. You've wandered through temples, stumbled through incense clouds, wept in dream chambers, and drunk wine that probably had a little too much going on. And still, here you are, back in your room, whatever time it is, wherever you are, but different, in a good way. Because you didn't just tour ancient Egypt, you entered it. You felt it under your skin. You tasted its highs, both sacred and strange, and you learned that their world wasn't obsessed with death, like your textbooks tried to tell you. It was obsessed with transformation. They weren't building pyramids to honour bones. They were building stairways to something more. They weren't painting tombs just to tell stories. They were casting spells in colour, and when they got high, they didn't do it to escape. They did it to arrive, to get closer, to open doors that plain old waking life couldn't unlock. So, yeah, the ancient Egyptians got high, higher than you'd ever believe, but it wasn't just a party, it was a practice. And now, as your mind starts to drift, maybe you feel a little of that same magic lingering. A shimmer behind your eyes, a rhythm in your breath, a sense that, just maybe, you're still walking through that temple, that somewhere inside you're still lying on that dream-slick stone, chanting the syllables that cracked open the sky. Let that feeling stay with you. Let it carry you through the night, and when you wake, maybe take a deep breath, maybe drink some water, maybe look at the sun and remember it's more than just a ball of fire, because in some corner of your soul, you've been marked, anointed, blessed, and whatever comes next, you're ready.